My name is Erica Lorraine Spencer, and I remain subject to state surveillance and terrorism by the state of California that is operating a malicious targeting system which is referred to as federal group stalking and monitoring via communication devices. And it is in violation of federal stalking statute 18 U.S.C. sections 2261A subsections 1 and 2. My website and podcast serve the public good by publishing evidence of the public entity's ceaseless engagement in a pattern of conduct intended to stalk and monitor via communication devices, surveil, harass, and terrorize an American citizen in concert with the people of the state of California. Documentation serves the lawful purposes of wide exposure, federal prosecution, and influencing federal legislation with policies specifically designed to punish, dismantle, and disincentivize an unprecedented targeting system by a public entity that acts in concert with the people of the state in order to criminally place under surveillance and terrorize an American citizen, which is a matter of public corruption in the state of California. Notice: intellectual property theft is particularly egregious and equally unlawful where the sole inventor and creator of the intellectual property is the targeted individual. Erica Lorraine Spencer, subject to the unconstitutional and inhumane government system of gang stalking, otherwise referred to as federal group stalking and monitoring via communication devices, because of which the intellectual property created by the targeted individual, who is, in fact, Erica Lorraine Spencer, as the intellectual property also proves, serves to establish via evidence and expose the existence of criminal surveillance and thus an inherent threat posed by the U.S. government and the civilian population sharing engagement in the unlawful system. Such evidence that includes all of the content created by Erica Lorraine Spencer, images, videos, audio, etc., belongs solely and entirely to Erica Lorraine Spencer only and is necessarily published online in order to protect her life, safety, and liberty as the targeted individual, who is also the intellectual property owner, no less protected from theft procured through targeting by a public entity. Theft of any intellectual property belonging to Erica Lorraine Spencer, which is necessarily committed while she, being both creator and inventor, remains oppressed by the public entity via criminal surveillance, is a criminal and inhumane means of infringement under all circumstances and not protected nor enforceable pursuant to any invalid or fraudulent acts of copyright, trademarks, patents, etc., including as it pertains to any ideas associated with or generated from the intellectual property or the intellectual property owner, Erica Lorraine Spencer, whether creative, business, or otherwise, nor does the intellectual property owner consent to any such means of infringement and theft. License 5CXH279, 8GLV149, 5WLH200. Six COY 307, 6GQK 703, 8YMK 759, COLETHG, EG31Y58, that's a paper plate, 5SKD982, 9RMH210, and the demon that is lurking in the middle of the night. It's dark. These are the demons that are stalking with light. I'm taking pictures of them, doing so and getting everybody else documented. These are the sex offenders that engage in molestation. License 9KUT571, sitting in a dark parking lot, stalking with light, as I'm showing you as I'm walking from 7-Eleven, where Frito-Lay is engaging in the sex offense of stalking with light, demons that are tracking my steps, knowing exactly where I'm at, and doing so with regard to what is the engineered environment. This is surveillance and it's sexual violence by demons that are engaging in monitoring. This is the terrorism that the government is sponsoring. It is 5:03 a.m. Those are the demon-possessed that get each other identified with regard to a personalized federal prosecution. This is P.O.C. License plate 8HGW583. Stalking with light, Latino male, bald head, stalking at the Frontier venue at Laurel and D Street at 5 in the morning, stalking a woman. 5:32 a.m. stalking a woman. engaging in what is stalking her and doing so on behalf of the government in furtherance of the conspiracy to commit murder, doing so as a psychopath, stalking with light at nightfall as the demons are lighting a trail while they're following. And the entity is doing this during the day. When you see the fake sun remaining over me, that's what these demons are doing in the fullness, brightness of day, stalking with light. 8ZEN 882. It's mental illness that of the entity whose objective is to maintain presence while you are perpetually molested and pursued by demons who are stalking in order to monitor you. All right, monitoring your person, monitoring you is accomplished while you are coded in engineer light. This is monitoring your movement. It's also relevant to your communication devices. All right, this is entirely demonic and it's also psychopathic. License plate 8ATL383. And guess what else demons do? They're stalking with light when they are in traffic at the stoplights and at stop signs. They're stalking with light. It's the same conduct, okay? Frontier Communications is engaging in that. So is license 8ANV310. So is license plate. Frontier Communications, this is a psychopath. This is a demonic company. That's all it is. Satan is operating under the name of Frontier Communications. License plate 8A02168, stalking with light. License 9CRE805. License 8ZHT087. Okay, so these are demons living in their little broken down shack duplex of a household, okay, probably receiving government assistance, hanging on one leg and still gang stalking me, okay, sacrificing their whole well-being regarding federal prosecution for domestic terrorism in the United States, regarding deportation of all immigrants, regarding civil and criminal cases of corrupt businesses like Frontier Communications engaging in the sex offense, and what is, again, the malicious engagement and what is the use of a logo, which is, again, the government engaging what is essentially incorporation of what is criminal activity. And whatever it is that you're doing as a business, they're monitoring. And so is Frontier Communications. That's why I'm being molested. That's why I'm being stalked and terrorized in the parking lot of Frontier Communications, where all those demons are inside of that establishment, gang stalking. Okay? It's Frontier Communications at the intersection of Laurel and, what is that? Laurel and, this is D Street. And Frontier Communications, that license plate is, specifically the vehicle. I'll document also the venue address. Frontier Communications is license 31660L1. And they're inside of the building of that Frontier Communications, which is in relevant position. And the illustration regarding Frontier Communications is engaged in gang stalking. That's why when I go to Frontier Communications, that fake sun, that specific environment stalks me in doing so, where Frontier Communications is gang stalking. Okay, license 9PSV229. License 97608P80P1. These are demons stalking at the U.S. Bank at 333 North Euclid Avenue, stopping at a traffic light to engage in presence in the path. That's what they're doing when I'm showing you stalking with light in the middle of the night. And this is documentation of what is ongoing psychological torture by maniacal psychopaths who are obsessively stalking you even in bathrooms, monitoring your vagina, and stalking 24 hours a day, where I'm showing you what is identifying stalking with light, which is the objective. They are all demons doing so while a fake sun remains over me during the day. This is exposing a demon-possessed population that is severely mentally ill, which is a threat to the life of an American citizen. It's a threat to their life, to their safety, and to their well-being. It's also a threat to your liberty, because those demons are also in law enforcement, masquerading as though they have authority under the law, as though they're police officers or a part of a sheriff department that have actual constitutional authority, and they do not. They're engaged in criminal surveillance. They are demons as well. They are psychopaths as well, who are maliciously engaging in what is stalking and monitoring you and calling it law enforcement, and they have a documented pattern of kidnapping, and that is a threat to your liberty. Okay? That's the entity that's engaging in this P.O.C. It is 5:37 a.m. All right, this is documentation of the Ontario International Airport gang stalking by using commercial planes hovering over the Ontario Town Square. You will see a demon stalking with light and the logo representing the City of Ontario engaging in the satanic means of targeting, which is relevant to psychological torture. It's the sex offender monitoring my vagina. It is the City of Ontario stalking through the municipality, stalking in concert with the people of the state, stalking using commercial planes. And you're looking at the entity engaging with keeping a fake sun as I go to the City of Fontana, and the entity is engaging with is flying over the 224 North Euclid Avenue, Ontario Town Square, where I'm located, where I'm situated, hovering and doing so. And as you can see, while they're stalking on Hope Boulevard, as I showed you yesterday in images, stalking me where I'm walking, they're stalking me where I'm remaining right now. And the entity is doing so by flying miles away from the airport, where I'm showing you Southwest Airlines planes are parked on those terminals on the grounds of the airport. They're flying miles over for Southwest Airlines like they are approximately 10 minutes ago, 7:09 a.m., when there are no published flights before, by the way, which is published on the Google Drive. There are no published flights regarding departures where you would be even flying in the direction west, where the Ontario International Airport is southeast of the Ontario Town Square, let alone flying miles over in the direction northwest to be flying over the Ontario Town Square. And you're doing so not engaging in any departure from the airport. You're engaging in what is stalking, targeting this location by being at that low elevation, and the entity is doing so with that frequency that I'm documenting. One plane, and then 30 seconds later, another plane, and I'm documenting that while it is also not in conformity to what is published on the website. Where Alan D. WAPNER, who is a domestic terrorist, this is a demon, who's engaging in what is targeting in a demonic mean and a psychopathic means of stalking with commercial planes. And that's relevant to the civil and criminal prosecution. The entity is also engaged in federal stalking the City of Ontario, while they're both gang stalking me, which you'll see the City of Ontario with the peculiarized light on Euclid Avenue. And they're simultaneously blocking the Wi-Fi, where the City of Ontario Wi-Fi is initiated every morning at 7 a.m., but not today. And I took a screenshot of that. The entity that's engaging what is monitoring my evidence engages in criminal conduct and then appropriates, while it thinks it's appropriating, it appropriates its behavior or whatever it's doing based on knowledge of what it is that I've exposed. So I just want to be clear, the entity is both targeting me and also blocking internet access, which is not there. As you also know, there are no malfunctions. There's no mishap or no accidents. The entity is monitoring you. The entity is monitoring on the internet. Any malfunctions or inability to access is based on ongoing surveillance that the entity is maintaining, ongoing, and they're not losing any internet access. That while they're engaging in what is monitoring you. So this is the entity, what that's relevant. They're targeting the City of Ontario, stalking me by planes, stalking me by the demons using the municipality vehicles, and also blocking internet at the same time. And it's well after 7 a.m. where the Ontario Wi-Fi is available to the public as of 7 a.m. So I want to document that. That's, again, an unlawful threat. And the entity is doing so while they are engaged in federal stalking under all circumstances. It is currently 7:21 a.m. This is P.O.C. All right, it's 7:30 a.m. right now, and I first want to go ahead and document City of Ontario, Alan D. WAPNER, domestic terrorism, ongoing stalking, psychological torture, also criminal conduct with in concert with the people. So the entity is also engaged in facilitation of gang stalking. All of this is committed in furtherance of murder. The government's still acting in a delusional manner. You're going to prosecute actual people and companies for it, and it's delusional while the body of evidence is sitting on the record publicly. Also, they're monitoring in the background. This is also impunity. This is the people of the state that are going to be in federal court, that are going to be begging and pleading for mercy. They're going to be asking for lesser sentences. They're going to be asking for less time. They're going to be asking for mercy of the court. And that includes people like Tracy Banks and Jason Fields, who are not going to get it. The people of the state that are gang stalking with the Ontario police, those demons that are headed to federal prison, and they're not going to get it. The entity is engaging in this while it's 7:30 a.m. Southwest Airlines is gang stalking as an entity at 7:29 a.m. Again, you're going to look at the list of published arrivals and departures. Southwest Airlines is targeting not only by hovering over the town square, but by doing so, and there's no listed arrivals or departures regarding what Southwest Airlines is doing, flying miles away from the airport and then hovering over the town square and doing so. But I want to document on YouTube the entity on the venue of the internet. Surveillance is underway on the internet, and YouTube is a third-party facilitating venue. YouTube is a third-party ongoing documentation of the intent to obstruct justice and threaten my life and liberty in doing so. The entity is trying to conceal the podcast from September 9, 2025.
I am publishing it again, and I'm going to also put it on the face of my YouTube channel, where I provide what is a second copy with regard to what the entity tries to render private after I publish it. That's federal stalking, which is relevant to, again, the entity that's going to be in court. Diagnosed, convicted, facing sentencing, facing damages, and they're engaged in criminal conduct, and it's directly rebutting what they will state in the future regarding, oh, please have mercy, oh, I didn't mean that, and I didn't know that. You're lying. Yes, you did, Satan, and you're going to pay the full penalty. Okay, the entity is engaging in this conduct, and I want to be clear. Also, the September 10, 2025 podcast. Again, it's private when I published it. This is specifically on YouTube. I already stated a long time ago that YouTube, while it is apparently the largest and most popular platform for podcasting, you should not rely on it. YouTube is corrupt. YouTube is engaged in surveillance on the internet. YouTube is engaged in the conspiracy to murder people and steal their property, okay, while targeting them. YouTube is a gang stalker. Okay, so there's that one basis, but you should not rely on it with regard to witnessing this public investigation. YouTube is, I go and I always am paying attention to it because it is a relevant platform that I'm publishing the evidence on. But for the podcast, you should go right to what is the link that I share on X, because that's taking you directly to the host, the RSS feed, which is updated by me immediately, and you will get the totality of the podcast, because YouTube tries to, and that is the entity that tries to limit your ability to access that, and I'm going to prosecute for that as well. But I do want to be clear, September 9, 2025, September 10, 2025, those are podcasts that the entity is seeking to, that's criminal activity, that's committed with the intent to obstruct justice while federal stalking is underway, and while there's still gang stalking. Southwest Airlines, the Ontario International Airport, the City of Ontario, the people of the state, still threatening my life, still acting in further the conspiracy to murder, and while simultaneously trying to silence me, trying to suppress evidence revealing that in real time. That's serving for what is relevant to the ongoing prosecution. And this entity is going to be in court. They're going to be answering for these things. That's why I'm still documenting while they're still targeting. This is P.O.C. at 7:35 a.m. All right, criminal summoning is a P.O.C. by the City of Ontario. YouTube is being updated, and that is AMR. Oh no, that's on Ontario Police. They're being disbanded, and the people are pacing. Criminal summoning at 7:40 a.m. with simultaneity to uploading the YouTube channel. That's federal stalking by that department that's engaged in a pattern of kidnapping while they're engaged in federal stalking under Title 18. It's also impunity by those kidnappers and those violent sex offenders and those psychopaths who are mentally ill. It's 7:41 a.m. Ontario Police are on traffic cameras. They are with the lights on and sirens. That's audible activity, relevant positioning, and criminal facilitation of gang stalking in furtherance of murder. And they're driving what is south on Euclid Avenue. It is 7:41 a.m. P.O.C.
Erica Lorraine Spencer here. The following is an audio version of video evidence that is captured for purposes of mass distribution, which is why I am capturing it and sharing it on the podcast for evidentiary purposes, and also to reveal the wealth of documentation that extends beyond what it is that I document on podcasts. Much of the video and images will be published onto the YouTube channel, the P.O.C., and it is also shared on the Google Drive. Again, this is for purposes of revealing what I remain subject to, which is federal group stalking and monitoring. It is a demonic system of state surveillance that the government is practicing in concert with the people of the state, and it should be known and well understood that for the government to engage in federal group stalking and monitoring, this is a crime that is committed with a criminal purpose to threaten the life of an American citizen. This is to conspire to murder and or permanently kidnap an American citizen while engaging in a perpetual sex offense in concert with the people of the state. This is the City of Ontario monitoring, tracking my steps. Amplified plane activity. Where 2500 Airport Road, where the airport is, and it's also not in Fontana. Where you're looking at the behavioral pattern, this is what the white Tesla was doing at the Fontana Lewis Library entrance, where the fake someone's over me in Fontana, California, when I'm arriving during the 11 a.m. hour, and then I walk to the back of that Fontana Lewis Library at 8437 Sierra Avenue, where the fake only would be reflecting off of the windshield and would be over my head, not the natural environment with the city of Ontario. Those are the sex offenders that go into the bathroom, homosexual women that are around living their lives like they're heterosexuals, and their gang stalking partners they're both obsessed with my vagina. 6XTE243, and they're engaged in gang stalking with the Ontario police that are being disbanded. Remember, the Fontana police are gang stalking under the fake sun, as I documented in the afternoon just yesterday. Don't be deceived. The entity covered up the fake sun this morning because they're monitoring the evidence. And while I go from city to city, I've documented that pattern. You'll see when I go to Los Angeles the next day, when I return to a venue that I routinely document, the entity covers up the fake sun. That's why the Ontario Police Department, those demons that committed kidnapping, that's why they're going to prison. All right, while they are indeed engaged in federal stalking. You'll pay attention to that unspoken pattern. The entity is tracking my steps, stalking, clearly deviating. There's no takeoffs over 280 North Limit, where Southwest Airlines is gang stalking at 10:10 in the morning off of this same Hope Boulevard, while they're monitoring with sex offenders, 12212E4, another homosexual. They go into the bathroom to monitor me as well, stalking, obsessed, psychopaths. There's no sun simultaneously over the Fontana Lewis, and there's also no sunlight inside of that Fontana Lewis library. There's never any sunlight that's going to reach into the depths with the flashing light all over the desk, where you're also seeing what is the evidence, direct evidence of the city of Ontario and the city of Fontana, both engaging in the shared pattern of conduct. Doing so with that provide evidence against themselves. C. Torres, L. Martinez, Nathan Morgan, B. Hook, L. Edwards, Alex Escobar, who was under the fake sun at 12:13 p.m. and it's still over the same entrance. Remember what she's doing on the side of this venue? Right here, while I'm in the bathroom, my vagina is being monitored by the people of the state, 9UMH980. They're doing so with the entity that's engaging in documented acts of what is psychological torture and harassment, while demons that lack self-control are going to federal prison with the evidence that I document showing that, proving that they're targeting. This is what is also putting Tracy Banks and Jason Eisenfield in prison. All right, the demons of the city of Ontario stalking with peculiarized light, they're doing the same thing while they're driving under a fake sun. This is light activity while the sun's in Fontana, and the municipality is gang stalking in concert with Paul Leon, okay? Not different from the gang stalker Aquanetta Warren, where both cities are engaging in the statewide pattern of conduct, and this is prosecuting the Fontana police that are targeting under the fake sun, like I documented, facing Spring Street and Sierra, and this is documenting the Ontario police who are stalking, engaging in a documented pattern of stalking. Don't forget, that's Ontario Town Square. What are they doing flying over me for a whole hour from 8:59 to 9:59 a.m.? And we're looking at what is 1:18 p.m. and the fake sun's over me. I'm looking at that same property. That wouldn't be the sun. And I'm also looking at the same venue where they're flying over me on another day, stalking for 20 minutes, flying in circles over me while the fake sun is over me at the same address. This is where the entity is both engaged in gang stalking and also monitoring the evidence that I've collected and published regarding them gang stalking. And gang stalking is committed by a government in furtherance of the criminal conspiracy to commit murder. And the entity that's acting in furtherance of that conspiracy to commit murder engages in ongoing acts of documented psychological torture tactics, such as stalking under a fake sun and stalking with impossible light, like the people of the state do, stalking in bathrooms, monitoring while you're in a private space like that, as a public, engaging in a sex act together, 5XFZ715, and they do so while the entity is stalking and terrorizing and harassing with helicopter, which is exactly what you're doing. And it's very targeted when you're comparing the criminal conduct I documented in Fontana versus the criminal conduct that I've been documenting in Ontario, where the entity is engaging in what is keeping that fake sun over me yesterday. That's the impunity. The demons are going to federal prison. Mike Lorenz is indeed a sex offender. You see that large label over his head? Look on the Google Drive. And so is Paul Leon. He's a sex offender keeping my vagina under surveillance. So are the demons that are of the Alan D. Wapner. He's a sex offender, and they're all demons. And those violent sex offenders, they practice pedophilia. They engage in criminal conduct against American citizens and then gang stalk them in order to murder them and criminally defame them. And the Ontario police that committed kidnapping, they're going to prison. Okay? This is the entity that was tracking my steps. That's why the Ontario International Airport that has to fly miles away from that airport to then hover over the 280, where you're hearing that volume, where you're looking at that low elevation, where you're not doing anything other than stalking, just like the Ontario police are under the fake sun that's over the same person at the same venue, directly conflicting evidence of the sun being over the Fontana Lewis Library. Okay, that's the P.O.C. I'm documenting the fake sun still at the Fontana Lewis Library at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm documenting it still at the Fontana Lewis Library at 6 o'clock in the evening, where you know that this is a gang stalker conspiring my murder, 5XFZ515. And that's the criminal conduct committed by the mayor, every gang stalking mayor. That includes Aquanetta Warren and Paul Leon, who are going to be removed from office. This is P.O.C. It is currently 1:20 p.m. See that fake sun move as I move? Right back to the same inches. This is where it's at when I'm entering at 10 o'clock in the morning. This is the same. This is exactly the location where it's at 10 in the morning. This is P.O.C. All right, it is currently 1:57 p.m. And what you are witnessing, first of all, is demonic activity. And you're learning that the demon-possessed are violent sex offenders. All right, they are also psychopaths, highly malicious creatures who commit sex acts against people that don't know about it. And they also engage in what the criminal system of gang stalking, which is being exposed in the United States. And the sex offender is the OVITT so-called family community library, where the fake son is over 215 E.C. Street, where the city of Ontario, stalking by plane and helicopter, further corroborate this evidence against the sex offenders who are engaging in surveillance in the bathroom inside of the OVITT family community library, where you will see the employees. They are not engaging in what is relieving themselves. What is legally relevant is that they're intentionally engaging in what is pacing and what is engineered light. They have double shadows, a varying concentration of shadows. And I took a picture of that because that environment, first of all, is supernatural. It is as supernatural as the sun remaining over the Fontana Lewis Library yesterday after it's been engaged in rising and setting on Euclid Avenue. But it's present on at Fontana Lewis Library over my head in Fontana, remaining over me en route to Fontana, including on Omnitrans. And the entity is at 11:25 a.m. over 8437 Sierra Avenue with the fake sun, and remaining as I walk out again and show you another picture of the fake sun in the same position it was at 11:25 a.m. at 3:21 p.m. And so I'm showing you what is the fake sun regarding the video that you just listened to in the Ontario International Airport that is engaging what is gang stalking in the city of Ontario, which is evidence against gang stalking proven to be underway in Fontana, California. And that is the entity that is engaging in what is criminal activity that is shown to be mutually exclusive regarding proving nothing other than targeting is underway in that environment pursuant to the person that's being targeted and identifying how that targeting appears. And it is mutually exclusive with regard to the stalking under the fake sun. Under those circumstances, that's where the entity that is engaged in surveillance and surveillance on communication devices and surveillance in places like bathrooms where only sex offenders are engaging in what is stalking, and psychopaths are engaging in stalking in ways in which they assume that you don't know, and sex offenders and psychopaths engage in stalking in places like bathrooms when they know that you know, and they are obsessed with your genitalia, and they continuously do so even in the face of the federal government witnessing the evidence of such sexual violence committed as a public entity. Doing so using helicopter that's stalking me outside of the library, doing so while then pacing in and out, and that is pacing that's happening in engineer light, not any sort of conduct regarding what is relieving yourself. It's legally irrelevant what you claim. I don't care if you're stuck. I have to throw up. I have diarrhea. I have to go give birth to a baby in the bathroom. They're doing it in engineer light. They're doing it while demons like that in the quiet area are amplifying audible activity regarding monitoring me in the specific area that I'm at. They do that in the bathroom, while they maintain knowledge just like they do regarding violating my privacy on my phone, on the internet, my social security number, my credit card numbers, any bank accounts, any transactions I'm engaging in. That's all under surveillance, and so is my vagina. And what you're seeing is homosexuality that is being revealed while stalkers of the female gender are surrounding the bathroom, and they surround the bathroom regarding where I'm located. As I go downstairs and I sit at a table to get the faces of sex offenders, predators engage in what is seated around. So you'll see the African American female with white pants on. She's seated where the Ontario OVITT Family Community Library sex offenders place what is a seating area so that surveillance can remain underway and that there is no escape regarding somebody present in order to gang stalk upon entry and exit of that private space, which is terrorizing conduct regarding what is ongoing knowledge, psychological torture that is, that your vagina is being kept under surveillance by all the demons, all the sex offenders inside of that library, and all the demons like Alan D. WAPNER and Mike LORENZ, who are stalking by planes and helicopters under that fake sun. And it could not be the natural environment. It could not be anything other than targeting me, because I'm showing that same phenomenon over the 8437 Sierra Avenue Fontana Lewis Library from 11:25 a.m. until 3 in the afternoon yesterday, where the employees are pacing in and out of the staff restroom, which is in alignment to the women's restroom, and the gang stalkers who are sex offenders pacing in and out of the male restroom. which is in alignment to the women's restroom. The women's restroom is in between the staff restroom and the male restroom. We're sex offenders of both genders. These are predators of both genders, and it's relevant to what is exposed to homosexuality. Women that are stalking, women that are obsessed with genitalia of another woman, women that are demon possessed, and that is their condition, that is their obsession, that is their sexual deviancy, regardless of how they are living their lives and presenting in everyday life. This is the entity that's doing so in engineered light. This is the entity that's doing so under the fake sun. The fake sun is over the top of my head at the staircase when I re-entered this venue where the sun is remaining from 11 to 3 in the afternoon as a matter of images. Remember yesterday's video, which was September 10, 2025, I captured video at 6:47 p.m. just to remind you regarding the impossibility that sunlight would maintain any thick bar into the depths of that Fontana Lewis library to create what is my upright shadow as I stand in it, sitting at the computer, where those demons are so obsessed with me, they pursue with what is impossible light, while psychopaths sit around not looking at you, not talking to you, and they are all in there stalking you. And the ongoing pregnant silence with impossible light activity equals a federal prosecution for gang stalking and criminal surveillance. And that's underway in the bathroom, where the fake sun's over the same staircase, but yet it's remaining over 8437 Sierra Avenue, the Fontana Lewis Library, where the entity is engaging in what is keeping that fake sun until after 6 p.m., but yet it's over the same entrance where it's at, where that same Ontario Police Department is stalking me by helicopter at 10:17 in the morning, in the same position that it is where I'm walking out after 1 p.m. That is evidence, that's analysis regarding isolating the universe, and it's referred to as a universe because the demon-possessed who are obsessed with me, who are addicted to stalking me, and who are obsessed with my vagina, which is an unlawful, ongoing, sexually violent, and illegitimate interest by the government that's engaged in a criminal conspiracy to commit murder of the person that it is obsessively stalking and monitoring as demons, with the people of the state who are demons and who are engaging in surveillance, as you will see those images. That's where the entity is engaging what is surrounding the bathroom. That's what everybody sitting around with their nose in a book is actually doing, making sure that there's someone in the path at all moments, at all times. The entity is doing so with regard to the evidence proving what's the actual focus. And it's not you being at work pursuant to a schedule. It's not you checking out books for your 3-year-old daughter. It's not you catching up and doing your biology homework regarding your college courses. The entity is doing so under the fake sun and in the engineered light. The specific environment stalks me to this venue. That's how it's over Fontana Lewis Library from 11 a.m. until 6:47 p.m. as a matter of proven evidence. That's the significance. And that ongoing sexual violence, that is that fake sun, moves, as you've seen it, over the bathroom section where I'm at while I'm inside of the bathroom. That's what's witnessed. That's what's happening outside. The fake sun moves as I move. This is demonic. And so do the sex offenders. They're engaged in surveillance inside of the OVITT family community library. They are a family of demons, a community of sex offenders who are engaged in surveillance in a bathroom. And homosexuals surround in what is that bathroom location where they're walking in and out of the staff restrooms with multiple shadows they're monitoring, where they're walking in and out of the male restroom where they're monitoring, and doing so because they know that I'm taking pictures. So this sex offender walks into the male's restroom and walks out at the same time. You'll see that in the pictures, at the same time that one of the employees walks out, so that that sex offender can monitor with regard to being present in the path. These are demons. You need to understand the operation of your communication devices in this engineer light. It's very demonic. That's the significance of being in the path, even while I'm capturing evidence. That's how obsessed they are with monitoring, as opposed to being prosecuted as terrorists and as violent sex offender. A violent sex offender as an entity. This is a never before contemplated level of sexual violence. It's never been contemplated under federal law. Okay, you're talking about millions of people together that are keeping your genitalia under surveillance. You're talking about what should be private, what the Constitution demands is private, dictates is private, is actually public information amongst a corrupt entity that's stalking and surveilling your genitalia using planes and helicopters. That's how invested Alan D. WAPNER is in my vagina. That's how invested and concerned with my vagina Mike LORENZ is. That's how concerned and how criminal the expenditures are on sexual violence committed by the gang-stalking mayor Paul Leon. And you know all of that by the impossibility that the sun would be over the staircase at 215 AC Street, like I captured in the image. That's speaking to the impossibility that the fake sun, even these demons covered it up in the morning, and that's after I came from the city of Fontana, because the demon possessed and the government is, again, thinking that you're an idiot and that you're just going to forget what happened before I went to Fontana, and that the fake sun was never ever over the entrance over the OVITT Family Community Library, and that you're just wiping the sketch, wiping the slate clean like it's an Etch-a-Sketch, and the fake sun is covered up. And so that's speaking to what is not gang stalking. This is what you're engaging in conduct tantamount to what is delusion. Okay, that's how I was able to go to Fontana and show you that the OVITT Family Community Library is a sex offender. Okay, not only that, the evidence is already on the record, and the evidence of an entity that's monitoring, keeping the evidence under surveillance, engages in this ridiculousness of covering up the fake sun. The demon possessed that are stalking under a fake sun, you're talking about the supernatural ability to shine that fake sun and the supernatural ability to cover it up. It will never be the natural environment under any circumstances, and that documented pattern of covering up that fake sun is equally probative evidence of stalking with a fake sun. It's not a coincidence when I come back from LA. It's not a coincidence when I come back from Fontana, but it is evidence that's going to prosecute the Fontana Police Department and the Ontario Police Department and every other gang stalking terrorist organization masquerading as law enforcement. And they're invested and engaging in using helicopters to monitor my vagina and then threaten and psychologically torture me because I'm publishing evidence that proves it, while they have predators surrounding me inside of the library, particularly when my panties go down in that bathroom. That's what every homosexual female is obsessively consumed with, making sure somebody is present to engage in surveillance. That's why they have multiple shadows under what is artificial light that does not create multiple shadows. Just like sunlight outside doesn't create your shadow above your head or multiple shadows. Or in the dark, light doesn't manifest out of nowhere in the dark, creating a shadow in the dark. This is the entity that's engaging in gang stalking inside of the venue, proven to be engaged in gang stalking inside of the venue by the fake sun being over that venue, and it's over that venue regarding what is evidence showing that it is impossible that that's a natural environment. It is indeed a fake sun because it's remaining over the Fontana Lewis Library as a matter of documentation, September 10, 2025, from 11:25 a.m. until 3:21 p.m. as I give you a screenshot reminding you about that regarding what is direct evidence of homosexual women predators who are stalking another woman and obsessed and concerned with what is my vagina. These are the same demons that consume my bodily fluids. They search out my tampons and my pads. These are demons that practice witchcraft, and none of their witchcraft, first of all, doesn't work, and it's going to be used to diagnose them for severe mental illness while they're stalking me in the bathrooms throughout the city of Ontario, stalking me in bathrooms throughout the state of California. That's what's going to happen. And the entity is doing so with sex offenders of the male gender as well. And what you're understanding as well is regarding some sort of illusion that males are more predatory than females. And that is an absolute lie out of the pit of hell. Mental illness is born of a spirit. And these women are equally predatory and sick and obsessed with my vagina. They are accurately referred to as homosexual predators. Okay? And you need to know that they're bat poo crazy. They seek out my bodily fluids. They want to ingest my blood and then run around in circles under a fake moon at night, praying to demons that are not going to do anything to me. That's why they're out of their minds now, stalking me everywhere that I'm going under a fake sun and under a fake moon at night. And they're psychopaths sitting there staring at a book like they're doing something else, like you don't know what's going on, because you do. Everybody does. And that's the evidence, that's the relevance, rather, of what you're seeing while I'm taking pictures walking in and out of the bathroom. They're doing so in engineered light. They're doing so while I sit outside of the bathroom. Oh, she might go, and the entity is making sure that they're present in the path. That's a predator. It's a predator, okay? It's not about, oh, I gotta, I have to go number 2, man. I ate a big old Chipotle burrito. They're in engineered light. They are tracking my steps. The fake sun is showing you that they're tracking my steps. That's how the entity has what is a plane hovering over outside of the front door right when I walk out on the video that you heard, tracking my steps. That is relevant to the bathroom. That's a whole other level of a sex offender. And that is in the mind of all of the demon possessed. Every single one. That spirit of sexual violence is in every single last one of them. And this is speaking to what is mental illness that is shared by a population. This is a criminal system of sexual violence that is practiced by a population and it is a system of gang stalking. And Aquanetta Warren and Paul Leon share the same condition, share the same criminal engagement in this system, where the police and the demon-possessed that want to refer to themselves as police with regard to a malicious system of criminal surveillance. They're not police, and that's not law enforcement. It's absolutely not. There is a constitutional standard, and they fall way beneath that, and it's going to be public information that monitoring my vagina is exactly why they are not law enforcement. And there is also a list, a very detailed list regarding every demon that committed kidnapping pursuant to monitoring my vagina, monitoring evidence, stalking me in furtherance of the conspiracy to commit murder, and they're going to prison for it. As surely as the imbeciles are stalking on video in helicopter and doing so at the same address in the morning and in the evening, where the sun would never be present over the Fontana Lewis Library as you juxtapose crime scenes and as you isolate a universe where the sun would not be perpetually over one building on the east or on the west side of one building between 11 to 12 hours throughout the day. It's never in Florida when that happens. This is the entity that's surrounded with that evidence, and that evidence includes keeping my vagina under surveillance, which are the sex offenders that are gang stalking. This is why Jason Fields and Tracy Banks, both of them sex offenders, having sex with each other and obsessing over my genitalia while they're sharing and soliciting the gang violence by the state of California to get away with theft from me, to defame my character, and they are still acting in furtherance of committing murder, still engaging in what is practicing witchcraft, and they're doing so in furtherance of the conspiracy to commit murder, and the federal government is it's relevant to the prosecution of the federal government because the federal government is sitting back engaging in gang stalking me. It's not an investigation. Okay, this is relevant to that ongoing unlawful threat to my life. These images, it's currently 2:14 p.m., are going to be uploaded, and that is essentially what I'm capturing. I'm showing you what are demons. You're seeing them all sitting around. It's a library full of demons. Just like you see at the Fontana Lewis Library, the fake sun is in the same position it is at 11 o'clock in the morning when I step outside of the same entrance during 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Where did the sun go? It did not go anywhere, and it's over the same person, myself. That is not the shared experience when I'm at the back of the library and that fake sun's at the back of the Fontana Lewis Library. There are people that are in the front of the library. It's not a shared experience. When I'm on Omnitrans and I get off that bus, that fake sun is no longer remaining in the window of that bus, keeping in step with me. That bus drives off and that fake sun remains over me. Other people get off the bus while I stay on the bus. That fake sun does not remain stationary over them, meaning I can't capture it out of the window anymore, going the same speed as the bus that I'm on, or in Tracy Banks's vehicle that I'm being gang stalked inside of by her and the people of the state, or over my vehicle when I am operating and driving on the roads and the highways. The entity is clearly engaged and shown and proven to be engaging in targeting in satanic and psychopathic, malicious manners, in other words. The demonic pattern of conduct is relevant to malice. The psychopathic pattern of conduct, meaning it's so unbelievable that you could not believe it, and even just speaking it out loud is supposed to result in defamation of that target individual, that's relevant to malice. And that malice is exactly what is the evidence to diagnose and prosecute. You have a population of women who are homosexual. They are obsessed with my vagina. That is a fact. And they're engaged in what is obsessing over my vagina, while the fake sun shows that they're stalking me in the bathroom. That they engage in activity creation with regard to knowledge that, oh, her panties are down, create activity now, okay? While demons of both genders are pacing around like psychopaths. That pacing conduct, that's psychopathic. This is P.O.C. It's 2:15 p.m. This is documentation of bathroom monitoring. All right, monitoring my vagina with the Ontario International Airport. You hear that plane activity? They're monitoring my vagina at the OVITT Film and Community Library. License 8HZH380, license 93019N3. And the airport's flying over. This is an Asian male. This is a sex offender. And the airport's flying over the library. Okay, not the airport, but the demons of the Ontario International Airport. There's no flights where you're taking off, arriving or departing, flying over the airport. These are sex offenders using the Tesla chargers, monitoring my vagina, BOBAJO, gang stalking at the Family Community Library, monitoring vagina. Okay, that's what they're doing, stalking in the path, and that license plate is tracking my steps. You'll see the image that I'm capturing of these demons who are stalking the path, stalking with light while they're driving at the C Street turn circle at the entrance. As I'm walking toward the door, that's stalking with light. That's what you're doing when I'm walking out under the fake sun that sits over the same entrance all day long. This is what they're doing at nightfall. All right, so monitoring my vagina. Come over here. Let me show you again. This is an Asian male. Or another, yeah, this is the same one. 93019N3 is that license plate. These are sex offenders. And this is, again, the city of Ontario. This is the state of California that's engaged in sexual violence. These are predators engaged in federal stalking under Title 18, and they're doing so with a level of obsession and impunity. This is P.O.C. All right, and this is terrorism as you walk outside of the venue and a bunch of sex offenders engage in a corporate sex act, monitoring you with the government that's flying over the venue, all of that P.O.C., that's terrorism. All right, that's the entity that's engaging that. That's an Asian male, again, with that license 93019N3, wearing glasses, black hair, a sex offender engaging with monitoring a black woman, okay? Engaging what probably doesn't have any African-American friends or anything. All the stereotypes that you're referring to or are cognizant of, all right, and is engaged in what is monitoring me. And that's because he's a demon. 8EAX648, that's why he's interested in my vagina. That's why he's stalking. That's why the Ontario National Airport is flying over the library back parking lot section. That's why. Okay? That's, again, the entity that's engaged in what is, as a community, as a state, engaging in what is a violent sex act. Okay? And the employees of the OVITT Family Community Library share in that sex act. And while they commit these sex acts, this is the same OVITT Family Community Library that committed kidnapping. All right, license 8DFU546. Yeah, they're going to prison. Yep, they're going to federal prison for keeping my vagina under surveillance, and then those sex offenders committed kidnapping, like I documented in June of 2022, because they're angry about being documented for doing what they're doing, monitoring my vagina. 6SOU248. All right, stalking on Lemon with the method of light. Let me show you this. This is a demon. This is what you're seeing on Euclid Avenue at 3 o'clock in the morning. While I'm uploading on the video of the internet, while they're keeping me under surveillance, stalking with light. These are demons. This is terrorism. License plate. Monitoring my vagina. It's a community sex act, 9RTA 789, and stalking with light is 31660L3. That is Frontier Communications, a sex offender. Okay? P.O.C. monitoring my vagina as well was Frontier Communications, 31660L1. This is with the city of Ontario. That's why the entity is following me throughout the city with planes and helicopters, because the government's monitoring my vagina, and the government is the people of the state monitoring my vagina. Those are the egregious sex offenders, and they're demons. This is what demons do. This is what demons do. They are violent sex offenders, and they are obsessed with this black woman's vagina. Obsessed with it. Very much concerned with it. Every single company, every business in California is keeping my vagina under surveillance. That's the reality of gang stalking. It's currently 9:04 p.m. and that's the terrorism that you're approached with upon exiting the venue, where they were sitting around engaging in stalking in a library all day long. That's all you're doing when you have engineer light inside of that venue. That's all you're doing when the fake sun is sitting over that venue. And then you're talking about in federal court what's sitting over the Fontana Lewis Library and sitting over the OVITT Family Community Library and flying over my head in helicopter, the behavioral pattern in that targeting environment. And what you're doing is monitoring my vagina, okay? And then you commit a kidnapping when you're engaging in monitoring my vagina, you're going to prison. And you're going to be labeled as a terrorist and a violent sex offender, a violent one. It is currently 9:05 p.m. That's P.O.C. All right, sex offender license 7VVP628. I'm just walking by a bunch of demons. They're all together engaged in that sex offense together. All I did was walk outside of the venue. The demons are stalking as a population. All right, so you're talking about what is that same spirit over millions of people who are together stalking me. And that's in that engineered environment where you have a gang of shadows surrounding you, where you have a fake sun remaining over you all day long. And I prove that to you when I go to Fontana and that same pattern of conduct is underway. So pray tell, what is that sitting over the OVITT Family Community Library? You already know that's not the sun, because the sun doesn't sit over one building all day long, and the sun can't be over you in Mississippi when it's sitting over me all day long on one street at one library. Those are demons that are monitoring my vagina. Okay, and sex offenders want to monitor my vagina and have me not say anything about it. And then want to falsely depict my character. And the accusations that the OVITT Family Community Library made, they were projections. They're the sex offenders. They're going to prison. They're going to prison. LOLSS, that's Florida. Monitoring, stalking with light,
making a purchase, filling up with gas, audible activity, and while they're on this side of the street and I'm on the opposite side, there's sex offenders molesting me with impossible light, stalking with light. Those that are monitoring my vagina. P.O.C. All right, the same demons stalking at Chevron, monitoring with the Ontario International Airport. So let me show you that combination. There's no airport over here, and there certainly are no flights, arrivals, nor departures. That includes the Ontario International Airport flying over Lemon, the San Bernardino Housing Authority on Lemon, and making a U-turn, and they're doing so right as I walk out. Remember at 6:45 p.m. when I'm capturing the fake sun setting, which is what I reminded you at the Fontana Lewis Library, where they had that fake sun aiming in perfect alignment with me on the second floor of that library, and that's where the Ontario International Airport is stalking, on the same street where the fake sun rises. Those are the sex offenders monitoring my vagina. 9 PSS 957 with the City of Ontario. Alan D. Wapner's obsession with my vagina is going to be national news. He's going to be prosecuted for being a domestic terrorist and a violent sex offender trying to murder the one that he is sexually obsessed with as a psychopath, while planes are stalking me throughout the city in an unmistakable and very detailed and specific pattern of conduct with a population of sex offenders. A population waiting at the traffic lights, which the state controls, driving around the Chevron waiting for me to complete a purchase, engaging in that lying in wait conduct like a murderer, like a predator. And the moment that I walk out, you're already stalking in a plane, hovering in the parking lot, in alignment with the demon at the traffic light, in alignment with me as I walk out, in engineer light, which you already know is present, and you're hovering over this Lemon Avenue, the Housing Authority office off of Lemon, in the parking lot where ARCO is at 434 North Euclid Avenue, Chevron is at 506 North Euclid Avenue. This is the entity that's clearly targeting. There are no planes that are taken off over Starbucks, where you see Southwest Airlines on video at the airport, like I showed you on Omnitrans, where the fake sun is over the Ontario International Airport, okay? Where the entity is necessarily flying miles away to be over at this location, and you're going flying miles over to, at the same time that I walk out of the Chevron, fly over and to be in alignment with me and then make a U-turn. That's what you'll see the entity doing. These are sex offenders that I'm documenting. Sex offenders are identified by business name as well. The sex offender monitoring me by going through the drive-through of the sex offender Starbucks license plate. 49187C4. This is P.O.C. And this is the entity that is still actively engaged in the criminal conspiracy to commit murder because they're still gang stalking. Alan D. Wapner is still stalking with commercial planes. Mike LORENZ is still stalking with helicopters. And the people of the state are still stalking with light, pacing all around, not going anywhere. And the same with that engineer light, they're not going anywhere. It's a population of demons that are driving back and forth, maintaining presence around me, and obsessively keeping my vagina under surveillance. That's why I'm showing you a bunch of homosexual women and a bunch of demon sex offenders that are going in and out of the male restroom, which is relevant to the purpose of pacing around while they are also keeping you under surveillance in that bathroom. Both while homosexuals are in that women's restroom and while they're pacing outside around that restroom, and while the government is stalking, pacing above in planes and helicopters. It is unprecedented and never before articulated under federal law, a basis of sexual violence and violation of privacy committed by the government that's engaged in criminal surveillance, like the Ontario International Airport continuously proves to you. License 8ZRL002, monitoring my vagina. License 6UMS399, monitoring my vagina, sex offender. License 9PER798, monitoring my vagina. License plate 9HCH494, monitoring my vagina. License GLBROKR, monitoring my vagina, sex offenders. License CY25B63, paper plate, monitoring my vagina. Glorious Cochinas at 401 North Euclid Avenue. A bunch of sex offenders in there that are monitoring together. They're not focused on clubbing, okay? Or having margaritas. Whatever they're consuming, they're monitoring. License 8ASK205. And the engineered environment is what lets you know that. That's why the City of Ontario went all out of its way to keep a fake sign over the OVITT Family Community Library and not over Fontana, if that was the natural environment, if they weren't concerned and consumed with me and my vagina. License 13038F4, monitoring my vagina. A bunch of demons are stalking with light. That's what's happening at the intersections. That's what's happening in traffic. Surveillance, sex offender. License 9LA7774, I believe. Sex offenders, monitoring my vagina. P.O.C. License plate 9HDS 108. And this is why the entire immigrant population in California is subject to deportation, regardless of being legally here or being illegally here. They're immigrants that are in violation of the law. They're engaged in terrorism and violent sexual violence. That's why I'm documenting it, because you have what is a jurisdiction to deport every single last one of them. 9RZE 979, monitoring my vagina. That's audible activity and engineer light while I'm walking in the dark. 5UGS 890, monitoring my vagina. Where's the entity stalking with commercial planes? Right over here, where a bunch of sex offenders are gang stalking. Yeah, hovering, flying miles past the library to be where I'm located. This is at 333 North Euclid Avenue, Glorias Cochinas. And it is currently 9:14 p.m. where there are no flights that are scheduled. And you also aren't taking off, flying 4 miles away to be over G Street in Euclid. Okay, that's P.O.C. The entity is hovering over the U.S. Bank. These are a bunch of demons inside of Glorias Cochinas engaged in criminal monitoring. Glorias Cochinas is a corrupt establishment. Glorias Cochinas is engaged in what is federal group stalking and monitoring, and that business is a sex offender keeping my vagina under surveillance. That's how those facts legally operate. And so is every sex offender consuming things as customers who are demon-possessed gang stalkers. With the airport, that provides evidence against every single last one of them, including Glorias Cochinas, the establishment. It's evidence against people. P.O.C. All right, and you'll see the evidence, the entity is following as I go from Chevron, and the plane activity is happening, and then as I walk south down the street to what is D Street, and that plane activity is following, which is what I'm documenting on an ongoing basis. When I go to Fontana, and I go from Euclid, and then I go through the parking lot of the Metro 102, and then I go to Hope Boulevard, and the entity is engaged in what is stalking with planes, the path that I'm walking. All right, this is the entity that is stalking and also is obsessed with monitoring my vagina. They are violent sex offenders. That's why you've heard the word vagina so many times, because it is at the focal, it's at the focus of, it is the focal point regarding the sex offenders that are engaged in this sexually violent pattern of conduct of federal group stalking and monitoring. It's an egregiously violent sex offense. While the entity is monitoring you, and while an entity is engaged in what is stalking you in order to monitor you. All right, and that's showing to be what is not normal everyday life, what are not strangers, what is the existence of no privacy, and actually violent sex offenders who are stalking you and monitoring you. And they're also doing so because the government decided it's going to kill you. They're going to murder you. That's why they're gang stalking you. All right, JISI Trucking, LLC. This is a corrupt business. See if we got a license plate on the front of it. They're stalking with light in the path. US.1643004. Yeah, license YP68045. Monitoring my vagina. License 78909Y1. And license plate. Oh, hold on, let me get that again. Again, JISI Trucking is license YP68045. License 9EWB559. These are all sex offenders license plates. License 9MMV672. License 9LDX938. License 54706X2. Okay, P.O.C. All right, this is documenting a bunch of sex offenders because while the entity is monitoring my vagina inside of a building, the entity is monitoring outside of that building as well. Everything that's happening in a bathroom is public knowledge. That's the purpose of exposing this to you. These are sex offenders that are engaging in that conduct. Do you monitor the vagina of little kids? Are you interested in what's going on between their legs? Oh, it's shameful to even speak of that, right? You wouldn't even want that spoken of you. That's what the people of the state are doing. That's what JISI Trucking is engaged in. That's what demons that are holding hands of little kids are actually engaged in. And they're doing it to those that are under the age of majority in the way that I'm letting you know that that's what they're doing while they're gang stalking. Gang stalking is exposing what is satanic means of surveillance. Surveillance is proven also in a whole circus environment where all the sex offenders are under a fake sun. All of them. That's where the entity is stalking in planes and helicopters. And guess what those are? Sex offenders. Those are the sex offenders that commit murder. These are no small connections, and this is no small thing. The demon-possessed are the sex offenders. The demon-possessed are the sex traffickers. The demon-possessed are the serial killers. The demon-possessed are the kidnappers. The demon-possessed are the bank robbers. The demon-possessed are those that are maliciously engaging in conduct right in front of your face, relying on satanic conduct to create illusions that you're ignorant about. Meaning they're very malicious and maniacal in their tactics, very deceptive. All right? But not only is it deceptive, it's also very idiotic, because there's nothing intelligent or realistic about the sun sitting over the OVITT Family Community Library. And that's how you know that there's no exaggeration or hyperbole involved in. The sex offenders that are not under the sun in Fontana are monitoring, just like the sex offenders in Ontario, not under the fake sun over me in Fontana, are both exposed as engaging in the sex offensive monitoring in that bathroom. Knowing where you are, knowing where you're going, and in the event that you go there, making sure that your path is covered, making sure that a sex offender can monitor your every move pertaining to your panties being down, pertaining to your every physical movement. And they do that with little kids as well. Okay? The entity is engaging in this conduct, and that's what the entity is practicing while they're stalking me in planes and helicopters. And they're doing so at 9:14 p.m. That's what I documented. The entity is engaging in this, like I captured this morning at the Ontario Town Square, and the entity covers up the fake sun, because you have clearly forgotten every other day of over the years where I'm documenting the fake sun rise over me wherever I'm at, including at the Ontario Town Square, which already made it impossible that the fake sun was outside of the, well, not impossible that the fake sun, but made it impossible that the sun would be over me through the window of Omnitrans en route to another city. Because the entity is idiotic, as obsessive as they are, and while they keep you in an isolated, closed down universe, that requires that you not go anywhere. But you do go places. And when you go other places, you pay attention to that environment. And you also do not leave common sense outside of the doors of the tribunal, because the sun is not going to sit over ARCO on Euclid Avenue from sunrise until sunset. It's also not going to be in Fontana when you document that impossible occurrence. And that's the entity that is surrounded with evidence speaking to their mental illness and their sexual perversion regarding surveillance in planes and helicopters and corruption at every level of government. The Ontario City Council are full of sex offenders. The Ontario Fire Department is full of sex offenders. The Ontario Police Department are full of sex offenders. The City of Ontario is full of sex offenders. Okay? And of those sex offenders that are engaged in the conspiracy to commit murder by gang stalking, this is a mentally ill population who practice the same behavioral pattern. They're all stalking with light. That ongoing supernatural occurrence, that's not only the fake sun and the fake moon at night and the fake sun during the day, but also the stalking with light conduct while they're driving by, while they are just walking by, while it's just stationary inside of buildings all over the place, and they're just sitting around like it's not happening, keeping their nose in a book like they're actually reading, and many of them cannot even read. If the target individual weren't in a library, they would never step foot in there. They haven't read a book probably since the 7th grade, if then. The entity is stalking in a library because the targeted individual is a well-read federal prosecutor who's in the library. And that's why the entity is engaged in criminal conduct in the library. And so I want to be clear, the entity is engaging in this P.O.C. and it is exposing all at the same time mental illness, sexual deviancy, sexual predatory conduct, and the entity is exposing who is actually responsible for the crime reigns, and it includes the government. There's no randomness. I just want to be clear. It's the wicked that are out here engaging in criminal activity. All right, you're not, those that are, literally, I mean that the wicked are the ones that are responsible for the crime rate, and they're also the ones that are gang stalking. This is public corruption exposed. And I mean Jim Bowman, I mean Alan D. Wapner, I mean Paul Leon, everybody sitting, Deborah, everybody on the city council in Ontario, in Fontana, Aquanetta, okay, Miss Aquanetta, she's a sex offender. Okay? It's not different with Paul Leon in Ontario. It's not different because he's a man and she's a woman. It's not different because she's black and he's white. Or, excuse me, he's not necessarily white. I'm assuming that he's white, but you're not necessarily white because you're fair skinned. Whatever his nationality is, it's not different. It's not based on their race whatsoever, and they're sex offenders. The gang stalking system is exposing that. The gang stalking system is very specific, and it has prerequisites to who is engaging in it and what you are engaging in while you are engaged in gang stalking. And you're a sex offender. And that means a business is a sex offender. That means the community is a sex offender. That means every level of government is a sex offender. And that's what's stalking on the roads and the highways, stalking at the traffic light, waiting for me to walk out of Chevron so they can cross path while I'm at the Chevron, following me up and down the street in planes and following me up and down the street in their vehicles, where they're also using that as a means of the demonic conduct of molesting my body as the same population of demons that are stalking in bathrooms. A bunch of homosexual women in California that don't want it to be known that they're gay. And they are gay while they are gang stalking women, obsessed with their vaginas, stalking them, consuming their bodily fluids, and engaging in what is conduct such as following them in the middle of the night, molesting them, touching all over them. That's sexual conduct. That's a predatory mind state. It's also criminal, but it's definitely homosexual. And it doesn't change because you're holding the hand of a man that's also obsessed with my vagina, by the way. Also obsessed. This is the entity that's creating a whole illusion. These demons don't even like themselves or their lives. Okay? They're engaged in gang stalking me together, and I'm breaking all that down for you logically and legally. The Ontario International Airport is engaged in targeting me in ways that are irreconcilable with regard to targeting from the airport, targeting where I'm at, and targeting in the specific environment, targeting as I do what I do, and what I'm also doing, which is legally relevant, is documenting it. And while you're engaged in terrorism of somebody that is documenting you for terrorizing them and further to murdering them, and you're still engaging in that, that's relevant for federal prison, and you're not getting out. And there is not going to be any negotiation about that. You're not negotiating out of federal prison in the conspiracy to commit murder. You're not negotiating your way out of conspiracy to commit murder while gang stalking through millions of people in the city. You're not negotiating your way out of that. There is no level of damages that are going to get you out of federal prison at all, okay? There will be no negotiation. And the entity, this is not even something that's relevant for any negotiation. You're still actively targeting. We're not negotiating anything. You're going to prison. It's currently 9:25 p.m. This is P.O.C. All right, documenting the ongoing concerted conduct of Chevron at 506 North Euclid Avenue and the demons that are gang stalking with Chevron at Chevron. And so, again, first of all, driving across the street is not going to blind me with light. It's not going to touch me with light. And in addition to that, it's not coincidentally happening while that impossibility coexists with the Ontario International Airport stalking by flying miles away from the airport and hovering. That is relevant positioning and audible activity while I'm being molested. This is sexual violence committed by the Ontario International Airport, committed by domestic terrorists like Alan D. Wapner. Bowman is also a sex offender on the leadership panel of the Ontario International Airport. But again, the domestic terrorist that calls themselves a president of the airport authority, this is nothing other than a sex offender. This is a demon. Okay, and this is why demons are stalking in commercial planes in Ontario, California. So at 9:28 p.m. and 54 seconds, this is the same second moment when a demon, which I'm capturing an image, is driving from the Chevron to drive north on Euclid Avenue, which is coexisting with what is my being molested while I'm at a distance away. This is stalking with impossible light, and you've seen this while I'm inside of my hotel room, and engineer light is flying all around. My shadow is on the ceiling inside of my hotel room or inside of my bedroom in Alvarado Gardens, where my ceiling is above my head, or while I'm inside of Starbucks and the people of the state, like license plate 8 ULP 963, monitoring 7 WFC 498, monitoring 9 HHL 751, all of them monitoring my vagina as an entity, and doing so with the City of Ontario. And when they are driving on Euclid Avenue, meaning they are stalking, they are demons doing so, and impossible light is inside of Starbucks at 507 North Euclid Avenue, where the Ontario International Airport is stalking in planes, and impossible light is occurring inside of that Starbucks, which I've captured in a plethora of videos, and I've captured it at every single Starbucks as well, and it's a phenomenon. For it to happen once is supernatural, and I've documented a pattern of conduct of that occurring. For that to occur at the same moment as the Ontario International Airport is targeting by hovering over here, you're going out of your way to hover at this location where you're not engaged in any arrivals nor takeoffs, which is also what the Ontario International Airport website shows, where the flights that are occurring that I'm documenting are out of alignment with what is also published, which is another angle of identifying targeting. And Alan D. Wapner has no problem with you knowing that he is, first of all, a demon, and that he is engaged in what is public corruption, doing so in furtherance of the failure to avoid exposure as the state and as the City of Ontario, and doing so engaging in what is gang stalking. And gang stalking is occurring by the criminal misuse of that which is relevant to interstate commerce under Title 18, using planes to engage in what is a program of torture and terrorism, stalking, and doing so while also keeping the evidence of that terrorism under surveillance. And while I am documenting while I'm being molested with light, at the same time, amplified audible activity of the plane that's flying behind me at Starbucks, where I'm seated outside. And that is, again, at a low hovering elevation. And I'm also looking at the Ontario International website. And at 10:15 p.m., there is a flight number WN671 at 10:15 p.m. And it was canceled from 9:10 p.m. And you also have what is at 9:46 p.m. a flight to San Francisco, flight F92677. After that, you have a flight at 10 p.m. Atlanta, flight DL828. This is the entity that's engaged in what is very heavily high frequency level of stalking. Southwest Airlines flight from gate 406 at 10:15 p.m. And you're looking at what's the next flight. 10:15, that's a 30-minute, 29-minute disparity. And then you're looking at what is 9:46 to 10 p.m., that's 15 minutes. 10 p.m. to 10:35 p.m., that's 35 minutes. But I document heavy frequency of the planes occurring every 30, 45 to 90 seconds when they're stalking me. And it is also not aligned with what is published on the website. Where the Ontario International Airport is stalking with the demon possessed, that include license 8UPA 446 is stalking with audible noise and an engineered light, monitoring my vagina as well. 47385C4 sex offender. 7RGD 461 sex offender. License 8LXS121, and they're gang stalking with the City of Ontario. That's why the Ontario International Airport is maintaining flights, and I do so document that frequency. I walk out of the Chevron. A flight is maintained hovering over this parking lot where 434 North Euclid Avenue is. Everybody pumping gas in their car is gang stalking. Everybody working inside of these venues are gang stalking. Everybody living in the City of Ontario is gang stalking, by the way. And as I walk north of Euclid Avenue and document the sex offenders at Gloria's Cochinas parked on Euclid Avenue, monitoring my vagina while I was inside of the library as well, okay? The entity is, again, that's less than 2 minutes. I'm walking, I'm speaking that entire time. The entity is, again, then stalking as I walk north. That plane activity is occurring north, flying over the 333 North Euclid Avenue U.S. Bank, and doing so. There are the entities, that's a frequency of what is less than 2 minutes later, and doing so where I'm going. That's evidence of stalking from place to place. And there is no law that says that you can't prosecute for what is the public nuisance and the harassment by planes and helicopters in the city. There's no such law that says that you can't establish that. The entity, it's never been done because the entity is engaged in gang stalking. It's never been proven. But it is the basis based on what I have against the City of Ontario for the public nuisance of stalking by helicopter, and also the clear evidence of harassment and stalking by helicopters and planes. And the entity is also engaged in targeting while the City of Ontario is maintaining a list on the internet about arrivals and departures. None of that includes flight over the ARCO at 434 North Euclid Avenue, over the U.S. Bank at 333 North Euclid Avenue, or over the Starbucks at 507 North Euclid Avenue. And it's also occurring while I'm at those three venues, at the time that I'm at those three venues, where you are not taking off or landing. Okay, you are also clearly targeting while you're hovering in the sky space, and that level of volume. It's coexisting with what are demons who are also targeting with impossible light, as you already know the people of the state are routinely engaging in. This is relevant to criminal activity that Paul Leon is engaged in, and he does so with regard to the federal government. He does so with regard to the entire state of California. He does so, for example, with demons in the city of Fontana who are engaged in the same pattern of conduct. As I can go to Fontana and you see a seamless, ceaseless, uninterrupted pattern of conduct. And the entity is doing so pursuant to what are demons who are violent sex offenders keeping my vagina under surveillance. That's what you need to know about Alan D. Wapner. That's what you need to know about the entity that's stalking in this manner and doing so with the people of the state. This, like I said, this is in traffic. And that's Chevron that's going to be prosecuted for a sex offense of gang stalking. The establishment, the employees are third parties, and the gang stalkers themselves. I'm always documenting them stalking me at the Chevron as I go to the Chevron. You're a psychopath while you're stalking somebody at a gas station. You're a psychopath while you're stalking somebody and you're doing so by pumping gas in your car because you think that nobody's ever going to know that you're stalking somebody else. You're a lesbian while you're stalking a woman under any circumstances, which the demons at Chevron engage in. And that's what I documented last night in the Ontario International Airport, sharing in harassment by that lesbian who is triggered because she's being called what she is based on her behavior, stalking another woman. That's gay. Why are you stalking me? And you're also monitoring my vagina because that's what you know about gang stalkers. That's a lesbian, okay? And the Ontario International Airport is terrorizing me while I call out its co-defendant, the homosexual women that are monitoring in the City of Ontario. Okay, it is currently 9:37 p.m. I do want to capture that. This is the entity that high frequency. That's not what's reflected on the website regarding the Ontario International Airport arrivals and departures. It is clearly targeting, but I just break down the logic. I'm not just throwing out information and just saying, see, they're targeting, and I don't do that with anything. And you can clearly see the entity versus what I document and what the entity is reflecting on the website of the Ontario International Airport, and also the fact that it's occurring in the specific environment. This is an entity that doesn't have a defense in court, but then again, the entity never intended to be in court. The entity conspired my murder. That's also relevant to Alan D. Wapner's criminal activity. Okay, and doing so with the people of the state. And you're conspiring murder and engaging in a program of torture with millions of people at the same time. You're not negotiating out of prison. You're not going, there's not enough money you could pay me. Maybe somebody else could be bought, but you're going to prison. You targeted me and you're still you're going to prison. So everybody listening now, you already know where you're going, and you are going. You're going to prison. This is P.O.C. It's 9:38 p.m. Of those demons going to federal prison, it includes Tracy Banks and Jason Isaac Fields. This is criminal conduct that they are sharing in, that they committed with regard to the state that stole my property and permitted them to get away with stealing my property. And this represents the federal government as well. The federal government is not investigating. The federal government is gang stalking and engaging in what is gang stalking, and in hopes that their witchcraft is going to cause me to drop dead, in hopes that kidnapping is going to stick and I won't be released, in hopes that the entity will get away with causing me to go crazy by gang stalking me to death. Okay, this is what the entity is doing, and they're doing so because the entity sought to avoid exposure for stealing my property, for engaging in sex crimes that they don't want spoken of, and gang stalking me just made it worse. And you're definitely going to federal prison, and you know who you are. And some of you are so delusional you don't know who you are, but you're going to find out. You're going to prison. All right, it's currently 9:39 p.m. This is P.O.C. All right, the entity molesting, that's at 506 North Euclid Avenue. While the entity, a bunch of demons are engaging in surveillance, stalking together. The entity is monitoring, and that's supposedly an act of retaliation while they psychopaths molest you with impossible light. And what do you hear? While the entity is maintaining a list of flights where you're expecting arrivals and departures, none of that includes 507 North Euclid Avenue. All right, and while you're being molested with light, those are the demons that are stalking in planes. Doing so while they're monitoring the evidence. And you know that because they're all doing so under a fake sun all day long. Okay? And it's currently 9:40 p.m. All right, the next flight is 9:46 p.m. And the other one, that's Southwest, which was canceled and was changed to 10:15 p.m. And when you're taking off from the 2500 airport, where you are taking off from there, Southwest, Delta, none of those planes are hovering over here. You're not going to hear them. They certainly aren't going to be flying over the roof of UNICARE and Starbucks like I'm documenting. This is P.O.C., and that is, again, the government acting directly and the government acting vicariously, the people of the state. So the sex offender molesting, license 8ZWG 937, engaged in terrorism with the city, 9JIM 677, license plate 8JOA 392. These are all sex offenders monitoring my vagina, engaging in terrorism with the City of Ontario, license 6ZCW 619. And these are the demons that go into the bathroom stalking, keeping my vagina under surveillance, not focused on relieving themselves. You're not focused on relieving yourself and ending your life. That's a system of sexual violence where you are conveniently engaging in targeting in the same way where you're gang stalking where you live, in the same way where you're gang stalking where you work, in the same way you're gang stalking as you travel, in the same way that you're gang stalking wherever it is that you are visiting. It is ceaselessly underway, and you are gang stalking as a violent sex offender in bathrooms. You are gang stalking as a violent sex offender where surveillance is underway in the bathroom. Okay? That's what's molesting me with light, and the City of Ontario is stalking with planes. Understand the mental illness by the entity that is molesting with light and doing so with amplified audible activity while they're all stalking in the path, because this is stalking, and it's also going to be prosecuted as stalking because the government doesn't have any warrant or probable cause. Okay, so you're understanding how that's legally breaking down. Chevron is stalking as an establishment because Chevron is engaged in a criminal pattern of conduct where the government doesn't have any warrant for Chevron to engaging in surveillance with the state like the City of Ontario is establishing. Okay, I've already established that they are demonstrating, walking, and engaging in, literally executing the pattern of conduct that I told you that they were engaging in. There's no warrant or probable cause for Chevron as a corrupt establishment to engage in that. And there is also no constitutional right for Chevron as a corrupt business to engage in that criminal activity. And that is also a basis for civil and criminal prosecution. And it's a prosecution for that employee or all of those employees. It's a prosecution for the entity that is gang stalking maliciously as merely customers on the surface, demon-possessed gang stalking sex offenders in substance. With the government that's flying miles away to maintain aerial surveillance with the demons that are molesting with light at 507 North Euclid Avenue. And those are the demons that do so, psychopaths, that in their minds, this is the sickos' minds, and they're going to prison and mental asylums. Oh, I'm going to shine you with light, I'm going to molest you with light because I'm angry about what you just said. That's what the demons, that was what just happened right now. Okay, this is what they're doing on an ongoing basis, putting themselves in mental asylums and federal prison, and that's what they call retaliation. They're getting locked up, and they're being prosecuted, and they are going to be a template for understanding targeting terrorism in the United States. And also recognizing closeted mental illness and the sexual violence by this population. And it is speaking to what is breaking down the illusion of a family, of a natural family, of safety amongst those that don't have a quote-unquote criminal record, where the demon-possessed are engaging in sexual violence in ways in which you are learning about. And they are very much predators. They are very much obsessed with your genitalia. They are very much concerned with and knowledgeable about what's going on with you concerning what should be private, and they're not. And that's what's engaging in psychopathic conduct, such as molesting you with light, stalking you with planes and helicopters, stalking, which is the business of a city, a municipality, as opposed to what is the legitimate and normal maintenance of a civilization, okay? Understand the Ontario Police Department is being disbanded while the City of Ontario is showing that it is gang stalking. Because that's exactly how the evidence is demonstrating what the City of Ontario is doing, monitoring, and they're doing so while they committed kidnappings. They're going to federal prison and they're being disbanded. That's relevant to Alan D. Wapner's engagement in criminal surveillance. The ongoing surveillance using commercial planes. And doing so while Alan D. Wapner understand while one demon is molesting and another demon is amplifying audible noise, and all the rest of the demons, all of them together are surrounding in the path, they are together engaging in that sexual violence together. You're not an individual as you're molesting. You are an entity as you're molesting. You're touching. And there are a bunch of demons together engaging in a massive sex act. That is designed to keep you under surveillance. That's a legal analysis of gang stalking, through the demonic and psychopathic ways that demons never thought would be understood, or let alone capable of being, analyzed and reasoned through. But these are demons that sit around, they can't even read. They're stalking in a library because I'm in a library. These are demons that have no brain function. They're engaged in criminal conduct right now in plain view, and it's going to be in court. And there's no question that Alan D. Wapner is engaged in targeting. There's no question that the Airport Authority is engaged in targeting. There's no question that the City of Ontario is engaged in targeting. There's no question regarding what the Ontario Police Department has been engaged in, targeting. There's no question that they are mentally disturbed in doing so, with their stalking with noise and stalking with light and stalking all of them under a fake sun. This is mental illness that's exposed. And they practice routine sexual violence, like monitoring your genitalia, monitoring the genitalia of your children, keeping them under surveillance, knowing all about them in ways in which you don't want other people knowing about your children's genitalia. You shouldn't, but that's what the entity's engaged in. All right, it's currently, by the way, where the entity is maintaining plane. I want you to see this because there's no takeoffs over here. So when I'm on Hope Boulevard and the entity, Southwest Airlines, is hovering like they're taking off in front of the 1627 East Hope Boulevard TAD office, what is flying over 434 North Euclid Avenue? Because it's not a takeoff. This is stalking, and this is stalking captured on video. This is the entity that's engaging in that while they're taking off from behind the San Bernardino County Housing Authority. And the entity is doing that in the specific environment and doing so in concert with the people of the state. Okay? The entity is engaging what is surveillance, and being over there does not cause any light. You see how the entity is engaging at that distance? There's no light that's going to molest my breast, but there's also no light that creates multiple shadows. So let me show you the environment where the Ontario International Airport is maintaining ongoing flights outside of what's published by the Ontario International Airport on the website. Okay, the airport's at 2500 Airport Drive. This is 507 North Euclid Avenue, East Street in Euclid. There's no flights. You're flying over 4 miles northeast to be over here. And the entity is doing so while I'm documenting by podcast. And the entity is also doing so in the specific environment. Here's one shadow. Here's two. 1, 2, 3. And there's another one over there. This is the entity that's gang stalking. Those are sex offenders. Chevron's a sex offender. ARCO's a sex offender. UNICARE is a sex offender. Starbucks is a sex offender. The people of the state are all engaged in sexual violence. They're all driving in engineer light, just like at the OVITT Family Community Library. They're walking in and out of the bathroom like I documented, and they're doing so while they're pacing in this engineer light, and they're doing so while they know what's going on between my legs. In the same way that they're stalking me with light and they're targeting, they're also targeting regarding your genitalia. That's what stalking in planes coming from behind the San Bernardino Housing Authority on Lemon Avenue. There's no planes taking off from back there. That's targeting by the City of Ontario, and it's also outside of what's published on the website. There's no arrivals or departures from Lemon Avenue over what is Euclid Avenue. Where I'm showing you, this is also happening while the fake sun's right over the top of my head, which I've already documented at this venue where the City of Ontario committed kidnapping and they're going to federal prison. You see that engineer light? That's my headlight. All right, that's what's collecting my breath in concert with the City of Ontario, and that's a demon. That's mental illness. All right, license 9NPJ878. They're engaging in a sex offense while you're being molested. And they're also engaged in psychological torture. These are co-conspirators to murder. And this is the state of California that's going to be prosecuted. That's P.O.C. Millions of people of the same condition engaged in gang stalking. And you're doing so in this environment. This is stalking, not traffic. And the City of Ontario is providing evidence against the Ontario Police Department. This is P.O.C. It's currently 9:48 p.m. The entity is engaging in gang stalking, and it's evidence against the City of Fontana that's gang stalking under the fake sun yesterday. And the City of Fontana has a history of targeting me under the corrupt leadership, the dangerous leadership of Madam Aquanetta Warren, who's being removed from office, just like this sex offender, obsessed with my vagina equally, Paul Leon, P.O.C. All right, capturing that video of the entity engaging what is rising from Lemon Avenue. And so that's what I captured on video. And what you'll pay attention to the details. The entity, while I captured on video, they proceed with that flight. I mean, obviously, the entity engages in a lot of things. They'll fly over and then do a U-turn when I catch them. And by catch them, meaning I catch them when they're in the state of rising in elevation. And no, you're a baboon. You're not. Where are you taking off from? There's no airport over there. They do the same thing over 325 West G Street, which is even more northwest, okay? This is the entity that there's a body of evidence while they're only focused on right now. Why? Because they're stalking me right now. And I've documented them stalking me everywhere, and that's how you see the bigger pattern of conduct of stalking in planes. You're not taking off over Woodside Senior Apartments. You're not taking off over the 7-Eleven at 66 North Vine. You're not taking off more west of this location over the Hope Boulevard Stater Brothers parking lot, or over the 706 West Hope Boulevard Starbucks. The entity is engaged in what is stalking, and doing so while they're monitoring the evidence, and they're monitoring with the sex offenders, the demons who are the people of the state, who have an addiction, they have an issue with touching. These are the sex offenders that are monitoring genitalia and bathrooms, and this is relevant to their mental illness. When they are seeking to sexually harm others and also seeking to conspire their harm, conspire their death while they're gang stalking them. These are the demon possessed, and gang stalking shall be prosecuted regarding what is the mental health, the behavioral health concern. It's at the outset. Your mental illness is going to be put at the, your mental well-being is going to be put at the outset of your prosecution, as well as a criminal prosecution. And this is the demon possessed that are engaged in this criminal system, and it's state action. This is the government. And this is, again, the reality of the millions of people that are of this condition, demon possession, okay? But as I'm showing you their P.O.C., it's relevant to both diagnosis and it's relevant to a criminal conviction. While they are across the street and they're engaged in what is targeting with impossible light, it's what's going to be prosecuting businesses for that. You're going to be prosecuting the government for that. It's all state action. None of these are private citizens while they're in that specific environment, and the government is gang stalking through that ongoing conduct. And it is also providence because the entity is prosecuting itself. It's prosecuting itself, it's presenting evidence against itself like you would any criminal conspiracy. And the entity is so delusional and psychopathic. These are mentally ill people that have been playing in witchcraft, and these are demon-possessed people that are mentally unwell. And so they're engaged in conduct which is deranged and unhinged. And it is providing what is a body of evidence to their demise. And so they will not have any sort of legitimate basis in court whatsoever. There's not even a question regarding what is already established as a fact, and also the legal standard. It is already established beyond a reasonable doubt that the state of California is engaged in targeting in the ways in which I laid out and the ways in which I have explained. And then I just sat back and captured it for years to show you the truth of what I said before I captured the proof of it. All right, because how do you prosecute? It's not by what you intuitively know, by what you discern, but it's what you can prove with facts. And the entity is not only engaging in the criminal conduct, like I stated, this is demon possession, this is demonic activity. And that's what's engaged in what is murdering people by stalking in commercial planes. The Ontario International Airport is what is the candidate for what is shutting it down. It's a national security threat. In the same way that the mentally unstable that are the people of the state, that has no business in law enforcement, that has no business in public office, that has no business flying commercial planes. They kill people, okay? They murder them. And they're also malicious because then they twist it and try to make it into an accident that needs to be explained. No, it's not an accident. It's murder. That's why the entity is engaged in gang stalking. Gang stalking is a violent act committed by American citizens, and doing so in furtherance of the conspiracy to commit murder. And by the way, while the city of Ontario is engaging in this, it is, again, evidence that's going to serve to deport every immigrant in the city of Ontario. Bigger picture, that's the legal jurisdiction of the president, the Department of Homeland Security, to deport every immigrant in the state of California, because the entire state is engaged in this criminal system, which is terrorism. Whether you're here with your papers or not, it's a basis of deportation because you are a criminal. While you're witnessing me document you as an entity that is targeting in the city of Ontario. It is currently, by the way, it's 9:52 p.m. These are the sex offenders molesting. These are the sex offenders doing so as an entity that is psychopathic. And they're psychopathic while they're engaged in all of the malice that I've documented. The entity that's made the statements that I've captured over the years, while they act like they don't know who I am and they're gang stalking, while they've said made the harassing statements that they've made, acting as though, doing so as though, I don't know you, what are you talking about? And they've been engaged in this pattern of conduct because all of that evidence is sitting on the record. It's going to be used to diagnose them and prosecute them. They know exactly who the target individual is. They're engaged in an identical pattern of conduct, and that pattern of conduct is both the specific environment combined with that behavioral pattern. You don't have any coincidence with regard to the specific environment. There's no coincidence there. You know exactly who it is that you've conspired to murder. You know exactly who it is that you're stalking under the fake sun. And the statements that came out of your mouth, those are going to be used to prosecute you for how long you're going to prison for the malice with which you conspired the murder of another, for the malice with which you engaged in kidnapping, for the malice with which you engaged in that conduct when you were keeping the evidence under surveillance. You know exactly who the target individual is, and you also know what they're documenting about you while you're keeping their genitalia under surveillance. This is what's relevant regarding what the entity is doing by obviously stalking by the Ontario International Airport, and that ongoing mental illness, the entity that is caught engaging in that criminal conduct for a term of years, and then a psychopath engages in more of it. And then all you do is put it before a judge, and there's no question about what you're looking at. That's the demon-possessed that are mentally ill. Stalking with light is the outward demonstration of mental illness. Stalking under the fake sun is the outward demonstration of mental illness. Stalking in extraordinarily extreme manners like planes and helicopters is the outward demonstration of mental illness. And this this imbalance regarding this mental illness conduct, this conduct of the mentally ill, is speaking to what is changing the requirements to even get a license to be a pilot, to the requirements to be in law enforcement, and regarding how you are able to identify this population of sex offenders who are being prosecuted, identified, exposed as a state. And it is necessary with regard to making sure that these terrorists in the state of California are adequately identified so that the threat that they pose to the country in this nation, that where they hate American citizens, where they hate your privacy rights, where they hate you for enforcing those rights, that needs to be known, the domestic enemies that they are. The immigrants can be deported. Those that are homegrown enemies that are not going to be deported, they need to be adequately identified. And that is, again, relevant to the federal government to maintain a federal level of identification, something analogous to the Megan's List, those exposed and engaged in terrorism in the state, in any state, and engaging in what is a sex offense. Gang stalking is an umbrella of crimes, okay? And so this is speaking to what is a national security threat when you are being prosecuted and identified as an entity engaging in the sex offense of gang stalking. All right, and that's all relevant while the entity is just engaging willy-nilly stalking with impossible light and stalking with the plans at the same time. That's fine, I'm documenting it. The entity does the same thing when they're stalking very foolishly with a police department that's not going to be in court talking about they didn't know and they didn't mean to and we want to remain and no you don't, and no you were not, and yes you did. You're going to be disbanded and you're going to prison. It's as simple as that. It is currently 9:56 p.m. This is P.O.C. Plane. I want you to see this because there's no takeoffs over here. So when I'm on Hope Boulevard and the entity Southwest Airlines is hovering like they're taking off in front of the 1627 East Hope Boulevard TAD office, what is flying over 434 North Euclid Avenue? Because it's not a takeoff. This is stalking, and this is stalking captured on video. This is the entity that's engaging in that while they're taking off from behind the San Bernardino County Housing Authority. And the entity is doing that in the specific environment and doing so in concert with the people of the state, okay? The entity is engaging what is surveillance, and being over there does not cause how the entity is engaging at that distance. There's no light that's gonna molest my breast, but there's also no light that creates multiple shadows. So let me show you the environment where the Ontario International Airport is maintaining ongoing flights outside of what's published by the Ontario International Airport on the website.
Okay, the airport's at 2500 Airport Drive. This is 507 North Euclid Avenue, East Street in Euclid. There's no flights. You're flying over 4 miles northeast to be over here. And the entity is doing so while I'm documenting by podcast. And the entity is also doing so in the specific environment. Here's one shadow. Here's two, 1, 2, 3. And there's another one over there. This is the entity that's gang stalking. Those are sex offenders. Chevron's a sex offender. ARCO's a sex offender. UNICARE is a sex offender. Starbucks is a sex offender. The people of the state are all engaged in sexual violence. They're all driving an engineer light, just like at the OVITT Family Community Library. They're walking in and out of the bathroom, like I documented, and they're doing so while they're pacing in this engineer light, and they're doing so while they know what's going on between my legs. In the same way that they're stalking me with light and they're also targeting regarding your genitalia. That's what stalking and planes coming from behind the San Bernardino Housing Authority on Lemon Avenue. There's no planes taking off from back there. That's targeting by the City of Ontario, and it's also outside of what's published on the website. There's no arrivals or departures from Lemon Avenue over what is Euclid Avenue, where I'm showing you this is also happening while the fake sun's right over the top of my head, which I've already documented at this venue where the City of Ontario committed kidnapping and they're going to federal prison. You see that engineer light? That's not headlights. All right, that's what's molesting my breast in concert with the City of Ontario, and that's a demon. That's mental illness. All right, license 9APJ878. They're engaging in a sex offense while you're being molested. And they're also engaged in psychological torture. These are co-conspirators to murder. And this is the state of California that's going to be prosecuted. That's P.O.C. Millions of people of the same condition engaged in gang stalking. And you're doing so in this environment. This is stalking, not traffic. And the City of Ontario is providing evidence against the Ontario Police Department. This is P.O.C. It's currently 9:48 p.m. The entity is engaged in gang stalking, and it's evidence against the City of Fontana that's gang stalking under the fake sun yesterday. And the City of Fontana has a history of targeting me under the corrupt leadership, the dangerous leadership of Madam Aquanetta Warren, who's being removed from office, just like this sex offender obsessed with my vagina equally, Paul Leon, P.O.C. All right, 9:57 p.m., capturing another plane, stalking. This is monitoring while I am on the website, taking screenshots of the flights that are published for arrivals and departures. Another plane is, well, the people of the state, they're always engaged in stalking with light and stalking as a population. Okay, so this is exposing stalkers and demons that are keeping under surveillance that you were never supposed to be aware of. The people of the state are always engaging in that, while the entities engaged in aerial surveillance in the Ontario International Airport, hovering over what is the intersection of East Street and Euclid Avenue. 2500 Airport Drive to 507 North Euclid Avenue. That is in the direction, that would be northwest, and you are flying over Airport Road, you're flying over Holt Boulevard, you're flying over, well, actually they're not even doing that because they're coming from behind the Lemon Avenue, so they're flying straight over, like I always capture, by the way. This is what they're doing. They're flying straight on Holt Boulevard, and then they engage in making a U-turn, flying in the direction south. They fly straight over Metro 102, engaging in what is making a U-turn, flying south. They fly straight over Euclid Avenue, going in the direction south, making a U-turn, okay? The entity's not flying diagonally. The entity's engaged in, this is another one, and this is what's not published on the website as well. Okay, that's P.O.C. And remember, the plane activity sounds when they are approaching this intersection. That's when the plane activity sounds. So when you're taking off from the airport, what is it? What is incorporated in that? This is the entity that's targeting. Okay, that's another one. 9:59 p.m. This is the entity that's doing so. So like I said, I just took screenshots. The entity is, again, this is the unintelligent demon possessed. And I want to be clear, the mental illness of the demon possessed is relevant to the insanity that comes with practicing witchcraft, with playing with demonic spirits. And that is what is controlling the sick minds of demons that are flying these commercial planes. 9:46 p.m., 10 p.m., 10:35 p.m., 10:56 p.m., and 10:15 p.m. These are departures from the Ontario International Airport. It's 9:56 p.m. right now, and I'm documenting the entity that is gang stalking and the frequency that I'm capturing. The entity is also gang stalking 10:15 p.m., 10:15 p.m. Southwest Airlines. Oh, excuse me, these are the departures. 10:15 p.m. And again, another at 10:15 p.m. Southwest Airlines. 9:46 p.m. and 10 p.m. This is, and 10:35 p.m. And I'm just documenting right now the frequency. It's about 30 to 45 second difference. The entity at what is 9:59 p.m. Hold on, let me see.
Yeah, 9:57 p.m. and 2 minutes later at 9:59 p.m. And while I am at this again, this is the entity that's engaging what is flying in the direction west. So what you're reconciling that has nothing to do with arrivals and departures at all. And it's also in alignment with what is targeting what I'm doing on my device, which is, I've already shown, is the pattern of conduct of criminal surveillance. The entity does so as I capture screenshots of the arrivals and departures, as though that is going to help by clearly targeting by flying miles away from the airport where no plane is hovering when you're taking off from that airport. And it's already connected to what is a specific environment. Okay, the government would do well to not be caught engaging in what is clear deviation from what's expected by the police and the fire department and whatnot, or assuming that you're going to be given some stance of legitimacy, which you are not, in a specific environment. It's shown to be what is malice. The entity engages in criminal summoning, and you're supposed to, no, it's no emergency under the fake sun. They're monitoring. That's all, and I've already shown that. Who are they talking to? The demons that I'm telling you are stalking with impossible light. That's who you're engaging in talking to on the side of the street. That's who you're engaging in a traffic stop with. And both aspects of that criminal system is fully exposed, and they look ridiculous doing so. That's the mentally ill that are gang stalking the demon possessed. The entity, as I'm documenting screenshots, this is the entity that does so. They engage in more flights as though that makes it. This is the entity. The tactic is regarding psychological torture, but that doesn't work when you're being documented for targeting. Targeting is proven while you're flying miles away from the airport, hovering over any area in the city. What are you doing flying over there? What does that have to do with an arrival and departure if you're not engaged in the allegations of targeting using planes? If you're not a psychopath, if you're not stalking an American citizen in planes, what are you doing over there? All right, where are those planes headed? And the entity has nobody that's engaged in what is checking that, because everybody's engaged in targeting. And the federal government is also engaged in what is this criminal system as well. The federal government's engaged in relying on psychological torture that it thought was going to cause me to no longer be able to effectively communicate and prove and maintain a public investigation. And the federal government's going to be prosecuted for that. In fact, it's why Jason Isaac Fields is going to prison. Okay, Jason Isaac Fields is going to federal prison for everything that I'm documenting. The entity is engaging in this as I'm documenting at 9:09 p.m. walking out of the Chevron at 506 North Euclid Avenue. And as I am capturing that plane at 9:09 p.m., I walk up the street. And as I walk up the street, the entity is stalking by a commercial plane. And I'm capturing that again at what is, let me see, when I'm at the intersection of Glorias Cochinas, which is, if I have that, let me see, because I went from the Chevron and then I went up Euclid Avenue and I documented all those license plates. Here we go. Yeah, so it looks like 9:14 p.m. Yeah, I'm at D Street in Euclid. This is the entity that's stalking. 9:13 p.m., 9:09 p.m. As I'm walking up and down Euclid Avenue. That's following from at the intersection of E Street. Then I go down to the intersection of D Street, and the entity is stalking by following me at each intersection. The entity is maintaining plane activity right now back at what is the E Street intersection where they're hovering, and they're doing so as I capture screenshots, and they're also doing so with regard to the entity that is just maintaining flights, and literally the arrivals and departures are totally irrelevant regarding stalking by Alan D. Wapner, the Ontario Airport Authority that's engaged in surveillance using that airport. Okay, they're doing so in concert, and they're doing so as mentally ill psychopaths. This is mental illness that is, and it's also a misinformed method. The entity engages in conduct, so as you document them engaging in stalking you, psychological torture dictates that they'll engage in more of that, because that's what torments you, that's what harasses you, that's what causes you to unwind and break down and psychologically, suffer. But when you're being documented, when it is being maintained as an organized and detailed body of evidence, that isn't working, clearly. And it's showing what is a pattern of targeting. The more, in fact, that you fly over me by plane and helicopter, the more of an effective case that I have for harassment using planes and helicopters. As not everybody in the city of Ontario has the same experience as me. Okay, the demons that are working at Chevron are not having planes flying over them while I'm looking at Chevron, and that demon's inside of that venue. He is not, the planes aren't flying over him. The planes are flying over me, and I document it. I document it every single time they do it. That is how you build up a body of evidence, establishing what is a pattern of conduct of harassment. And while you're doing so as a whole government, that's terrorism. That's escalated. While you're doing so as mentally ill psychopaths who are engaging in what is demonic, that's domestic terrorism. While you're doing so through sick manners such as stalking with light, whatever that is, I had to document it in order to prove it because they're mentally ill. And that's domestic terrorism. While you're doing so under what is not the sun, not the natural environment, it could not ever be. As crazy as that sounds, that's the entity's mental illness. That is relevant to domestic terrorism. And you're going to prosecute for that. The entity's tactic is, as you document it, it will engage in more of it. And guess what that creates? A body of evidence showing that Alan D. WAPNER is a domestic terrorist and not a airport authority, the president of the airport authority. He's engaged in public corruption, and he is specifically targeting me in furtherance of a conspiracy to commit murder, knowing exactly who I am, knowing exactly what it is that I'm documenting, while commercial planes in particular, and also the smaller planes, the city of Ontario is stalking with all manner of aircraft, in other words. So the entity is doing so pursuant to a pattern of conduct, and the entity is engaging in that while they're necessarily engaged in that pattern as they're monitoring the documentation, keeping the documentation under surveillance. That's what the entity is doing right now when they're flying over, again, E Street, following, because I'm at E Street. That's what they're doing when I went to D Street, because they're following at D Street. That's what they're doing at the OVITT Family Community Library, over the parking lot, because I was in the parking lot documenting that Asian male, keeping my vagina under surveillance. That's where the entity is stalking. They weren't flying over Lemon. They weren't flying north of my location. They were flying, like they always are, south of my person. While I was at the parking lot, they flew over the library. While I walk up to the Chevron, they're flying over the parking lot south of me. While I go to Gloria's Cochinas and document, they're flying over the U.S. Bank south of me. While I walk back up here to the Starbucks, they're flying over the intersection E Street south of me, under the fake moon, with the demons who you hear engaging in audible activity and engineer light. And those are the demons monitoring my vagina. Okay, those are the millions of sex offenders, contrary to what criminal records reflect, that only a small percentage of people are engaged in sexual violence, and that's an illusion. It's as fake as the fake sun where Alan D. WAPNER is a demon obsessively consumed with my vagina. It's as fake as that fake sun. That's not true. There are millions of sex offenders, and sexual violence is very prevalent. The government's engaging in it, and that's why you have what is a ratio of criminal activity compared to what is actually a whole population practicing sexual criminal conduct. Okay, that's the entity that's molesting with impossible light, sounding that audible activity. It's not traffic. They're demons that are monitoring, and they're doing so with the government while I'm documenting ongoing harassment using the commercial planes. And like I stated before, this is the entity as I capture images, as I come from the library, I go to the Chevron, I'm documenting going up and down the street, the planes are following me up and down the street. And as I document on my phone, the planes are engaging in what is stalking and doing so. That's relevant to very specific people, and it's relevant to a greater pattern of conduct where the entity is going to be prosecuted. Because the Ontario International Airport is acting as an entity, not just as one corrupt, like Alan D. WAPNER isn't acting by himself, somebody that has it out for me individually. This is a demon, and this is an entity with the same psychopathic spirit and sexually perverted spirit. That's why they're obsessed with my vagina. That's why they're obsessed with touching and molesting me. That's why they're engaged in what is monitoring me, staying up all night, making sure they stay around me, staying up all night, making sure they maintain surveillance, including in bathrooms, including while I'm sleeping outside. That's how important I am. You're spending millions of dollars to stalk me in planes and helicopters. You're spending millions of dollars stalking me in fire trucks and ambulances when you should have something else to do. But since the city of Ontario doesn't, this is what is going to inform federal legislation. When you have proven that and prosecuted domestic terrorists like the state of California. Okay, and this is all happening under the corrupt leadership of Gavin Newsom. He knows about Aquanetta Warren gang stalking in the city of Fontana. He knows about Paul Leon gang stalking in the city of Ontario. It's a statewide pattern of conduct. Statewide. All right, this is P.O.C. It is 10:09 p.m. and that video is going to be published online. The images and the screenshots showing what are arrivals and departures, totally distinct, and anybody can see that on its face. But it's also relevant to a prosecution where I am forcing the government, because I'm going to prosecute the government, and I will make sure and go ahead, because it's establishing precedent. We're going to prosecute the government that had a disdain for doing its job because the federal government's engaged in targeting me. But you will investigate the airport regarding what's entailed And I want to be clear, that's a matter of training. That's a matter of procedure, taking off and landing at airports. And what the Ontario International Airport is doing every 2 to 3 minutes, every 30 to 90 seconds, while the demons are stalking with a possible light, while the demons are stalking under a fake sun. All right, it's currently 10:10 p.m. and this is P.O.C. Alrighty, the demons that are going to be disbanded, and again, delusional. This is what demons think. We're going to retaliate. You're dealing with a very petty, very sophomoric, very psychopathic at the same time. Serious criminal activity and also very immature and petty at the same time. So the entity at the same time stalks with plane activity, trying to duck and dodge that. So I took images, and you will see, you pay attention between the leaves on the trees, you will see the plane that is lighting up. That's the entity that made a U-turn, while at the same time the entity engages in criminal summoning, sounding the sirens. Those are the demons of the Ontario Police, listening to me document. That's what the people of the state, the same demonic spirit. Okay, this is the entity that, again, in its mind, I'm going to put myself in federal prison, and that'll show you. There you go, Erica. I'm going to stick it to you while I go to federal prison. That's the mindset of the demon possessed that engage in that. And this is documentation. Criminal summoning, while the entity is engaged in what is ongoing criminal acts of retaliation, ongoing harassment, ongoing threats by the entity that's engaged in what is criminal surveillance under Title 18. And this is the city of Ontario, the Ontario Police with the Ontario International Airport, and the people of the state, which are the city of Ontario as well, because these aren't private citizens, and they're also doing it under the fake moon, which is also evidence proving everything that I just stated. Okay, and so I'm gonna go ahead and take a picture of that right now. This is the fake moon that's in the background right here over me, over the same street where the fake sun rises and sets. But now when I go to Fontana, that's when the fake sun remains over me in Fontana. Those are the demons that are stalking in planes. Those are the demons engaging in criminal summoning as they hear me talk about the fact that they're stalking me and spending millions of dollars, and they're embarrassed, and it's true, and that's why they go out of their way to sound sirens while they're going to federal prison for stalking me. And that's in their mind, Satan has them deceived. This is mental illness at work. You're retaliating. There's no retaliation when you're going to prison. That's not retaliation. There's no retaliation when the airport's being shut down. When the mayor is being removed from office, that's not retaliation. You're sick. You're a mental health patient. That's why you're shining me with light, okay? You're not well. You're monitoring my vagina in bathrooms in the city of Ontario. You're not well. But I just want to be clear. This is what the entity does. And they do that over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. That's what is totally unfit to be in law enforcement, by the way. The Ontario Police is being disbanded. Like I said, it is currently 10:14 p.m. This is documentation that's relevant to the entity that's engaged in threatening, ongoing intimidation, retaliation. That's only in their mind, though, because this is a prosecution. That's mental illness at work. Very delusional conduct. Delusional conduct, mental illness, while also bearing weapons, while also wearing badges. And then when you see demons like a Casada under the fake sun, you're supposed to forget about that? No, you don't forget about that. You're getting a real life example of mental illness, of malice, of psychopathic disorder that's represented by that same city of Ontario, monitoring my vagina, okay? That's the entity that's engaging in that. Moments after I document, because they are stalking and using ambulances. You are spending millions of dollars stalking little old me. You are obsessed with my vagina, crouching in the middle of the night, using fire trucks, keeping my vagina under surveillance while I'm sleeping outside. And you clearly don't have anything else to do because I'm the center of your whole fake universe. And you are also delusional because you're going to prison. So where that is some sort of retaliation, it's only in the mind of a mentally ill, depraved individual that is collectively an entity that's going to be prosecuted for terrorism in the U.S. This is a mentally ill population. I just want to document that. That's P.O.C. It's 10:15 p.m. All right, so I just want to document the entity that is engaged in the P.O.C. Doing so, this is sexual violence as you're going to prosecute corrupt businesses. You're going to prosecute the people of the state, but you're going to prosecute also the commercial means of sexual violence, the commercial means of terrorism, the commercial means of psychological torture and public corruption. Chevron is located at 506 North Euclid Avenue in Ontario, California. Chevron is systematically, ceaselessly engaged in the pattern of conduct with the city of Ontario, the state of California. That's relevant to impunity and malice, and that's also relevant to damages upon a federal RICO case and the prosecution of its third-party employees that are engaging in that pattern of conduct as well. Chevron is where that sexual violence and ongoing terrorism with the city of Ontario. I'm on the grounds of Chevron when the entity is stalking me upon my exit by plane, when the entity is engaging in what is terrorizing me with the Ontario Police Department on the property of the Chevron while stalking in the middle of the night with headlights aimed toward me, which is engineer light, while I'm publishing evidence. This is on the video of the internet. They're on the grounds of the Chevron under the 11 a.m. fake sun, where the Ontario police exhibiting severe mental illness, keeping their back to me, and I'm the person that they're stalking. That's why they're going to be not only mentally examined, diagnosed, but also federally prosecuted for prison. The entity is engaged in this on the grounds of what is Chevron. There's a body of evidence against Chevron, and Chevron is gang stalking throughout the state of California, not just Ontario, but this is the evidence of the entity. The entity has the fake moon over me at the Chevron. The entity has the fake sun over me at the Chevron, and the Chevron is a violent sex offender. And it's facilitating that pattern of conduct while engaging what is definitely against public policy, making money while engaging in domestic terrorism and psychological torture. At 10:17 p.m., the Ontario International Airport, the Ontario Police Department, gang stalking by crossing path as I am documenting and analyzing in this evidence the Chevron, which is a third-party group stalker. Okay, that's relevant to Chevron unlawfully threatening me, engaging in that pattern of conduct. Every demon driving out of the Chevron is engaged in sexually violating me. Chevron is engaged in that sexual violence. The entity is doing so through a population which is speaking to an incalculable level of what is sexual violence, and doing so with a government that practices sexual violence, sexual deviancy, that practices what is psychological torture against American citizens and conspires their murder while they're engaging in what is terrorism. This is what Chevron is engaging in. This is 506 North Euclid Avenue. The entity gang stalking by the Ontario Police Department as well, with the intent to threaten and harass while Chevron is being documented. That's relevant to the criminal activity of Chevron. And it's also relevant to damages that you would sign when you prosecute corrupt businesses like Chevron, engaged in terrorism in the state of California. It is, by the way, a basis to raid the state of California, raid every business, to be honest with you, because Chevron hiring any immigrants, the government's engaged in terrorism with the immigrant population, just like I'm documenting every day. Just the entities engaged in, the city of Ontario in particular, by the way, is engaged in hiring immigrants while they're engaged in domestic terrorism. And that is the basis also to raid the Department of Homeland Security, to raid what is the Ontario City Hall, to raid what is the entity. The city of Ontario has also venues, which you can do your own research. You find out. I'm just giving you some information that you need to know regarding this criminal pattern of conduct while the entity is engaging in what is failing, but providing nonetheless evidence of ongoing gang stalking while the gang stalking demons of the Ontario police are crossing paths with the rest of these demons stalking with light while they're keeping me under surveillance. That is relevant to psychological torture while you're engaged in federal stalking with the intent to obstruct justice. And I am not intimidated or silenced by any demon that's obsessed with my vagina. What I do is I expose them. And that's the department that's being disbanded. They're mentally ill. And the Ontario Police Department are also enemies of the United States while they're engaged in terrorism with immigrants. That's also a basis to raid the Ontario Police Department. Hiring any immigrants that work for the Ontario Police, you need to understand that they're engaged in criminal conduct, and that's a basis to deport as well, including what is the criminal activity of the immigrant population, which is facilitated by the government itself, both the City of Ontario and the Ontario Police Department. So I just want to point that out. While the corrupt businesses like Chevron hire immigrants, that's a basis to raid them, like the Department of Homeland Security has been engaging in. It's not just Home Depot. It's not just where you're going and you're expecting. I just want to let you know, in the state of California and in the city of Ontario where I remain, and you can look at the body of evidence because the federal government is listening to this evidence. You can look at the body of evidence, and I'm letting you know the pattern of conduct is including the immigrant population, whether they're illegally here or not. They are here illegally while they're engaged in domestic terrorism, which the Ontario Police Department demonstrates and evidence that they are, which corrupt businesses like Brightview gang stalking me with its immigrant employees while they're hiring immigrants, and they're engaged in criminal conduct as a corrupt business. This is what every business in the state of California is engaging in. Every single last one is engaged in criminal surveillance, and where immigrants are hired, while immigrants are employed, rather, they're engaged in terrorism. And it is a basis to literally deport the entire immigrant population. Now that is quite a whistle, okay? And that's actually the truth, and it's all supported by evidence. The entity is engaging in what is keeping a fake sun over me while immigrants are targeting the city of Ontario, and as the evidence shows, they do so with impunity. In fact, the government engages in what is targeting American citizens as they expose terrorism by immigrants. That's how much of an enemy the city of Ontario is to the United States Constitution and to American citizens. the city of Ontario, the state of California is in no position at all to have any sort of basis or authority to protect immigrants that they are engaging in domestic terrorism with. And this is letting you know that every business is engaged in federal group stalking and monitoring, and where immigrants throughout the state, any of them having employment, it is a basis to literally arrest them and have them deported because of the statewide pattern of conduct that the city of Ontario, the Ontario International Airport, the Ontario Police Department so generously prove they are engaging in with that entire population. And of that population, the status, a tremendous status, are those of the immigrant population. There's no exception, as the P.O.C. shows. There's no exclusion. And they do so with impunity. They don't even like this country. They do so with a level of haughtiness, as though they have a right to engage in terrorism in the state. And justice requires deporting them while they're engaged in terrorism with the government that is going to be prosecuted. Okay? This is documentation relevant to public corruption, the entity that's engaged in un-American conduct with those that are granted a privilege to be here. And that's relevant to the Ontario police that are gang stalking right now. And businesses like Chevron are engaged in hiring immigrants. Whether they're here legally or not, they're engaged in domestic terrorism, and that is a basis for the federal government to deport. It is currently 10:23 p.m. This is P.O.C. All right, helicopter activity at 10:25 p.m. by the Ontario Police. Enemies of the United States engaged in ongoing documentation of harassment and terrorism, which is targeting, also proven by the people of the state, acting in concert with them and in that specific environment, while I am publishing evidence on YouTube at 10:25 p.m. It is... well, actually, it's at 66%, but I already released it for publishing. So when it's done uploading, which the entity is monitoring, the Ontario Police is engaged in federal stalking while they're stalking in a helicopter pursuant to a body of evidence showing that they are targeting me amongst everyone else in the city of Ontario. The entity is engaging in that with regard to what I just documented. So it's a CEASELESS pattern of conduct. The Ontario International Airport is gang stalking, where the Ontario Police are gang stalking as well. And the Ontario Police just engaged in demonic behavior pursuant to what is criminal surveillance using a helicopter. And that's the entity that doesn't have anything legitimate to engage in. And that's why the city of Ontario is not going to have a police department anymore. C. Torres, L. Martinez, B. Hook, Nathan Morgan are going to federal prison. They're engaged in gang stalking. They committed kidnapping on May 29th, 2025. L. Edwards, A. Quesada, and Alex Escobar. They're engaged in criminal monitoring as well, and they committed kidnapping on July 4th, 2025, right here at the Starbucks where the Ontario International Airport is still gang stalking as well. They did so under the fake sun, which I've shown rising and setting on the same Euclid Avenue, where they are on video engaging in what is a kidnapping. They're going to federal prison. And so is C. Hazelwood and Owens. They committed an attempted kidnapping on July 15, 2025, an unlawful search of my property, an assault and battery of my person, doing so with the entity that is gang stalking. So they were, in other words, monitoring and then engaging in what is an unlawful arrest, doing pursuant to what is a fictitious exercise of authority. They don't have any authority while they're stalking in a helicopter. They have no authority whatsoever, and it is stalking because they have no warrant or probable cause to engage in monitoring, which is what they're doing, gang stalking. They're stalking with audible activity and engineered light in the specific environment under the fake moon. They're mentally ill psychopaths who have been monitoring my vagina all day long. That's why you saw them stalking under the fake sun at 1 o'clock in the afternoon when the fake sun is over the Fontana Police Department yesterday. And the two aren't happening at the same time. And that's how you have the disbanding of the Ontario Police, and also understanding that the Fontana Police are also domestic terrorists. That's how you're getting to the gang stalker Aquanetta Warren and the gang stalker Paul Leon. That's how you're getting to the gang stalkers who are the people of the state, stalking from city to city and county to county, by the way. It's currently 10:27 p.m. That's the entity that's engaged in Title 18 federal stalking. Threatening me while I'm documenting the people of the state. The people of the state will be subject to federal prison. And the demon-possessed are literally going to produce their own names. The federal prosecution will be a thorough exposition of all information produced in court. You're going to produce the name of the pilot. You're going to produce the name of the one flying the helicopter. You're going to produce the information regarding operation at that heliport, at that airport where you're maintaining flights every 30 to 45 seconds, because the P.O.C.'s documentation is very thorough, and it is supplemental with regard to what the federal government shall engage in order to make sure that such terrorists go to federal prison and they get the mental examinations that they require, okay? Because they're a national security threat. The entities engaging in this, and they're doing so while they are focused on the moment. The focus is my vagina. The focus is their delusional level of hostility because they're psychopaths, being exposed for what they want to get away with because they're demons and they don't like being identified as such. That's why they're hostile. But they're not thinking about the bigger picture. And while you're engaged in conduct that's being documented, you're going to prison for it. Okay, so everybody else is mindful of that. The demon-possessed themselves are not. They're going to federal prison. And this is exposing, again, a national security threat. Rampant mental illness. Rampant. That's committed in furtherance of murder. Absolutely, the names I just stated, they're going to prison. Okay? And the Ontario police shall be no more. They're engaged in criminal monitoring in furtherance of murder. They're engaged in organized crime. They are the reason for the crime rate in Ontario, California. Okay, those that are gang stalking, those are the demon-possessed that are responsible for the crime rate. And the Ontario Police Department is sharing in criminal activity with them. They are literally a liability. And it is the benefit of American citizens that they cease to exist as a department. And that's exactly what's going to happen. And that's what justice requires. Okay? They are engaged in targeting with the immigrants in California. And they are also why immigrants can thank them for being deported from the city of Ontario. You can thank them. Okay? Because they provided evidence against you and your criminal conduct. And while I documented you and then they target me, you're going to be deported for that. In case you don't understand how a prosecution of a criminal conspiracy works, and I know you don't, because you kept stalking in the ways in which I prove as a matter of documentation, and you don't understand how you're going to be dealt with as a comprehensive body engaging what is targeting as an entity. I know you don't understand that. That's why it's happening to you, and everybody else is witnessing it as well. You want to engage in a public murder and ongoing targeting of an American citizen, you're going to experience a public investigation and a public prosecution and public humiliation regarding your severe mental illness that everybody needs to be aware of. That's called, by the way, reaping its judgment. It is currently 10:30 p.m. This is P.O.C. All right, ARCO at 434 North Euclid Avenue. Again, this is a third-party facilitating venue. The people of the state are stalking by filling up their gas, going into the market, paying any means of presence. And so the most obvious means of doing that, which is relevant to malice, not intelligence, because they do that under the fake sun. So everybody's looking at them. Everybody's looking at a bunch of psychopaths that still haven't realized that everybody sees them very clearly, that they're monitoring specifically me while they're all under a fake sun, stalking somebody and paying money to somebody else as your admission that you're engaged in criminal presence and activity creation, trying to murder somebody and do so secretly, maliciously, which is relevant to how calculated, how cold-blooded this entity of serial killers are. Okay, gang stalking by being a customer somewhere, and you thought that you're going to be prosecuted on some traditional stalking basis because you didn't understand how comprehensive judgment was going to be. All right, and that's the point in failing the test. But anyway, ARCO is located at 434 North Euclid Avenue in Ontario, California, and the demon-possessed are monitoring with the city of Ontario. And they're doing so, literally, the business records of these venues are going to be used to prosecute them. Okay? And it's coinciding with what I'm documenting. It's very, very practical. Very, very easy, actually, once you're understanding the pattern of conduct. And then you're going to engage in what is a strip down and the production of all the evidence. When I say I know who you are and I will track you down, you're going to federal prison based on what you did, I mean that, and the evidence is available to do that. So I just want to be clear, the entities engaged in public corruption. So what is that? The entities engaged in criminal conduct in plain sight. The operation of that business and the evidence of who was there and who was buying what, who was doing what, surveillance cameras, your business records, you're doing so in that specific environment, you're doing so while the P.O.C. shows that you were there. I got your license plate, I got your image, I got the video, what the government was doing with you, through you, and doing so in that environment with that level of malice, that level of concerted conduct, just because you want to murder somebody. And the entities engaging in this, and that is the evidence of ARCO that is sharing in this pattern of conduct while I'm at E Street and Euclid, where the entities engage in what is impunity. While you are demonstrating that somebody is stalking you, and then that stalker reasons in their mind that they should stalk you even more conspicuously, that is relevant to a prosecution. And the entity, this is the pattern of conduct of the mentally ill. Okay, that's again psychopaths that engage in that demented behavior, and it is legally relevant regarding that mental health and that criminal activity. Gang stalking is occurring through corrupt businesses like ARCO, who are monitoring throughout the state of California. And ARCO is located at 434 North Euclid Avenue in Ontario, California. And demons are gang stalking at that venue, molesting me with the sex offense that ARCO is sharing. And you're going to prosecute the business. It's relevant for prosecuting those third parties and working at that venue. And they're sharing in a massive sex act together. The demons are monitoring together. They're engaged in what is stalking all around you, pacing all around. They're not going anywhere. They're pacing all around. This is what's happening. You see the fake sun sit over me for 12 hours? Guess what's happening while the fake sun sits over me, rises on the east side and west side of my building at one, of my person, while I stay at one location all day long, just so that you can clearly see what is stalking. All they're doing is going in circles around me all day long, and they are demons. Okay? While you're being molested at nightfall with light that is not occurring from your headlights while you're across the street, which is demonic behavior that the Ontario Police Department engage in, you're doing so with regard to what is very specific evidence regarding who the person is that you're obsessively trying to touch on while you're stalking them. And while that person is documenting it, that's the type of sex offender we have here. That's relevant to the entity that's going to be, you're not going to keep those immigrants in this country. You're out of here. You're being deported. We have enough sex offenders in California. They're being deported. The entity is the commercial means of sexual violence, which is what ARCO and CHEVRON represent. You're going to civilly and criminally prosecute. And those third-party employees, you're not protected while you're on the job at work. That's a means of identifying you. That's audible activity by a sex offender that's molesting me with impossible light. That's called audible activity. That's a sex offender. Okay? The entity is engaged in what is monitoring. All these people that I'm documenting, all these businesses, they're monitoring my vagina today. ARCO's engaged in a sex offense, monitoring my vagina inside of the OVITT Family Community Library. CHEVRON is a sex offender, monitoring my vagina inside of the OVITT Family Community Library. And all the entity does is go to ARCO and CHEVRON and park next to a gas stall and fill up their gas. And guess what that is? That's admission to criminal engagement in the elements of monitoring, surveillance. All right, the entity is engaging in this, and we're going to be providing the business records. It's not a mystery, and that's something that's very practical. But nonetheless, the entity is doing so with regard to corrupt businesses like ARCO, who, again, it's relevant to the Department of Homeland Security. And how are you targeting terrorists? You're deporting them. And that's one very easy and obvious method that would do so much for the economy. It would do so much for jobs. It would do so much for the quote-unquote homeless population. But I want to be clear, as I've documented and as I have experienced somebody that is college educated and also legally educated, and the entity engaged in targeting me in order to result in this economic circumstance, homelessness amongst the system of surveillance is a product of being targeted. All right? It's not a some sort of, it is also those that clearly there are people that just do not care and they don't even put forth any effort. There are those amongst this population. But what I've documented, what I've experienced is that I represent a person, and I'm just going to be honest. I'm a person that made all the right decisions. I went to college, I went to law school, and I did that on my own. I didn't have parents to pay for I financed my own education, and I did all the things, right? Fully believing in the American dream as well. If you have the training, if you have the skill set, if you have all the right ingredients, and then I'm entitled to do whatever it is that I want to do, and that's what we're told, at least. But I want to be clear, this condition, this status, rather, it's an economic status. First of all, it is insufficient to establish mental illness, number one. But number two, the entity is engaged in surveillance. And this economic status is a product of targeting. And that's what needs to be known regarding California that's engaged in criminal surveillance. The people of the state are the ones that are harassing you at work. The people of the state are the ones that are firing you for a bad cause, or firing you just because you don't have to have any cause in California. No cause is perfectly lawful, but also bad cause. That's unlawful, but it's also relevant to what is seeking to interfere with your liberty right to gainful employment. To being able to pay your bills. If you're not doing anything that's interfering with your ability to sustain yourself economically, this is a product of targeting. And the entity that's engaged in criminal surveillance is what is demonstrating that that's relevant to the so-called homeless population. While the entity is spending billions of dollars on surveillance that it didn't even announce to the American citizens that it's engaging in, with the people of the state, a population of demons that are engaging in terrorism in the United States of America. Okay? But I just want to be clear, this is relevant to what is a method of targeting American citizens, keeping them in a state of poverty. And that's also relevant to the unconstitutionally vague basis of establishing mental illness when I find the economic status is insufficient to establish mental illness. That in and of itself. So what about these large executives that all of a sudden are released from their jobs because of the quote-unquote economy, and they also find themselves in situations where they can't even afford a hotel room? So they're mentally ill because they lost their income? How does that work? The entity is engaged in this conduct, and it is insufficient, but I want to be clear, it serves this corrupt system where the entity is targeting and manufacturing mental illness in a way that is projection, because they are the mentally ill. They're the ones engaged in criminal monitoring. They're the ones engaged in secret surveillance, and they set American citizens up, target them, and then claim that their economic status is because they're mentally ill. And not only is that in and of itself illogical, and it's insufficient to establish mental illness. That's not how you diagnose mental illness. I'm showing you, and I didn't go to medical school, okay? But you don't have to in order to identify clearly demented behavior. Clearly. I don't have to study psychology to understand that. And since, by the way, you have a bunch of morally bankrupt and corrupt medical professionals, I do take it upon myself to let me break down this behavior for you. Since you'll have what are absolutely subjective and biased intrusion by demons who are also lying, people that are perfectly sane. You're trying to falsely depict them as mentally ill. That's where you're getting to, okay, your opinion is absolutely irrelevant. That's not the practice of medicine. And you are not, like I stated, you are not accepted from the law as while you're in the medical field. This is what I love about the law, because everybody is subject to it, no matter what field you're in. No matter what field you're in. The entity thinks that because they're in the medical profession, you can engage in any sort of subjective ideas that you want to and whatever standards that you want. No, that's not how the law works. You are still held to the standard of the law. There are elements, there are facts, specific details in order to establish mental illness. Just to state that someone's economic status, that in and of itself is, no, that's not. That is not. And by the way, there is example after example of this economy failing. A lot of it has to do with what is corruption, by the way. But the entity that's engaged in that, and then you find yourself in that economic state. So then where are you at with this mental illness diagnosis? Where is that? Okay? It's insufficient. And I want to be clear. The point of what I'm stating is that the economic status of American citizens is a product of targeting. Surveillance is underway in the United States. Surveillance is underway in California. And so those that are, and like I said, the reason why I use myself as an example is because I did all the right things. I'm not somebody that struggled and didn't go to school and I just tried to put it together and thought that everything should have just worked out and fell in my lap. No, I actually did all the things. I did all the things. And then the entity engages in targeting. So with that education, with that background, so then you're just going to not hire. And who's the one that's not hiring me? The people of the state that are gang stalking, okay? Who's the one that when they do hire me, all they're doing is harassing the people of the state that are gang stalking? What is the immediate and reasonably anticipated impact of that pattern of conduct? It's going to directly impact your economic status. And then the entity goes to add insult to injury to then falsely depict your character and blame you for what is your economic status. And it is by design in order to facilitate this corrupt system where you have the police stalking you and then kidnapping you and making up information because nobody's ever supposed to question what the police say and what the sheriff's department confirm and what the court adjudicates based on made up information. Nobody questions that system. I have observed, and it's also by design, by the way, that's Satan's system. It's also by design that the Lord Jesus permitted the enemy to target me in this manner because I don't fit in. I am not the average. I did do all the right things, and I still ended up in this position. It is a product of targeting. So you're talking about the average person that's engaging. You don't have to go to law school. You don't have to be a rocket science. It's demonstrating, and it's proving that targeting is underway in every regard. Targeting in the way in which the laws are applied. Targeting in the ways in which you're able to lead your life. Those that are permitted, if you will, granted the ability to be exceptional in an economic manner, if you will. And those that are chosen to just remain at that substandard level. You're not going to make this certain amount of money. And I don't care if you did go to school. I don't care if you do have the training. I don't care if you do have the expertise, because that's literally what the state of California did. That's literally what they did. And then they engaged in gang stalking, and the point at which I noticed it and started documenting it, then they throw in, oh, she's crazy. Where did this come from? and that's the entity that's targeting you. So that's what I just want to state. But even outside of all of that, it is not the practice of medicine at all, and it's entirely illogical. It is absurd. It makes no sense whatsoever to engage in stating that because you are at a certain economic level, that you're mentally ill. That is insufficient. And that's what the state of California that is also engaged in criminal surveillance relies on while they're targeting. And the mentally ill are the ones stalking in planes. Those are the mentally ill ones, okay? This is the entity that's hovering. There's no takeoff while you're hovering over Euclid Avenue. That's miles away from the airport. Over here, and you can hear the plane activity. That's not a plane. When you're taking off from the airport, you're already so high in the elevation, you're not going to hear it. And I'm not even going to see it. It wouldn't even be interfering with what is speaking about. This is the entity that's engaging in that. And the entity's doing so. I want to be clear. The entity's been targeting me, unbeknownst to me, the entirety of my professional career. Before and after college, before and after law school, before and after I took the college bar, while I'm in the workplace, while I'm practicing law, okay? And the entity is responsible for my economic state to date, while they're literally providing evidence for it. Do you understand how this is going to cost dearly in federal court? No, the demons don't. The demons do not. But like I said, you're being kicked out of office, and it's public information as to why. You're being federally prosecuted. You're going to prison, and it's no mystery as to why. And it's going to be public information, and it is no mystery. The entity is engaging in this conduct, and this is a entity that's engaging in a crime committed by a population. Okay, so it's you're not first of all, a private citizen. The entity is targeting while you're going from job to job and you can't get hired. No one wants to hire you. And you're associating that with things like racism. That's a distraction. Okay? Black people are gang stalking me. Black people are gang stalking me with the demons of the Ontario Police Department. Okay? The entity is engaging in that. I just want to be clear. My fake family and friends, a lot of them are black and they're gang stalking me. Okay, so race is relevant to absolutely nothing regarding a satanic system. Satan does not have a race. All the demons are vessels of every color under the sun, the fake sun, while they keep it over me. Okay, all the colors of the rainbow, every single last one of them, gang stalking. Okay, the entity is doing this, and it's relevant to laws that shall change. Not only with regard to this prosecution and exposing criminal surveillance, which is relevant to prosecuting domestic terrorism, but it's relevant to exposing as I have also witnessed, policies and laws that are designed to facilitate this targeting system. So not only are you being targeted, then the laws are slanted in ways, they're crafted in a manner where this system can successfully oppress you. So even if the government targets you and you're in an economic state of, for example, being oppressed in one way, or financially oppressed, the laws are designed in such a manner, and the way in which this society is operating, the policies and the way it's all crafted, it's designed to keep you there. And that's what needs to change. Because I've seen not only the criminal conduct, I've seen and witnessed what is surveillance. We're not private citizens, and you don't have privacy. None of this is private property. I'm going to prosecute for the malice of that. But it's also speaking to what necessarily needs to change, the foundation. Okay, the foundation is corrupt. The foundation is designed to keep that ongoing oppressive status of that targeted individual so that the entity can keep them down. The laws need to be that, the law should be structured such that even where an American citizen is targeted in some corner in the United States where it hasn't been prosecuted yet, okay? And because it's no longer a mystery, it's known that the government's engaged in surveillance. And say there's some state that hasn't been prosecuted for some corner somewhere, somebody's being targeted and it hasn't been reported yet or whatever. So say they're homeless, say they're targeted, they can't afford to buy lunch for their 2 babies or whatever the circumstances, they can't afford to buy peanut butter so that they can have dinner at night. That's how impoverished they are. And it's a product of being targeted by the state. The laws need to be structured such that they are able to, even where the entity may be targeting them, it's also because the laws are structured in a manner that enables that and facilitates it and perpetuates it to keep them in that oppressive state. Where the laws should be structured in a manner, and I'm speaking broadly right now, and I have specific ideas, but I'm just speaking broadly right now. The law should be structured in a manner, broadly speaking, such that even if an American citizen like myself is targeted, I should be able to, because I am a go-getter, because I am self-motivated, because I am perfectly capable to get myself up out of that situation because of my ability to be creative, to be resourceful, to be ambitious and continuously engage in that. But that's not how the system is structured right now. And that is a part of the problem. It's not just the government and the entity that's targeting. It's also the laws that are facilitating that system. Understand that there is a dual impact there. And the laws need to change, because even where somebody may be subject to targeting, the laws and the policies, the way in which the system is operated, it's designed to keep American citizens in that state, in that status, all right, within that condition. That's not a coincidence. That is not a coincidence. And it's not a coincidence when you're under surveillance. The entity targets people and decides, okay, that, oh no, that person is not going to make it. I don't even care if they went to school to study to be a rocket scientist. We're not going to hire them, and we're only going to hire them in order to psychologically torture and harass them, all right, so that they can lose their mind, and that we can then falsely accuse them of mental illness, so that we can kidnap them and steal all their money, because we know how gifted they actually are as a rocket scientist, and we just don't like them. That's what the demon-possessed do. And then the laws are designed to have somebody that is trained to be a rocket scientist homeless on the street. How do you get that? It is not necessarily and automatically because of mental illness. The government's engaged in targeting American citizens, picking and choosing people who are going to, quote unquote, make it. That's what these demons do. They murder to engage in copyright infringement. They murder to engage in what is stealing your inheritance, money. That's what they do. And it is not because of mental illness that you're in necessarily because you're in some sort of economic status. And that is unconstitutionally vague, especially because it's coexisting with surveillance. They know exactly what is going on with you and that you're not mentally ill. That is a law that's going to be removed altogether. Altogether. It's totally unconstitutional. Okay, so the entity is engaging in that, and I just wanted to, that's an observation of mine, and that's also, again, what I was stated. This is Satan's design of the system, but me being in the position that I have, having the background that I have, and I'm making the observation, so I am, again, empathizing with the ordinary target individual, and I can see the situation that they're in when they're being oppressed, and then I'm like, okay, how would you even get yourself out of this when you have these sort of policies and laws surrounding you designed to keep you in that oppressed state? While, by the way, the entity is engaged in all manner of warfare. All right, it is a system that's designed to keep those who are targeted. Homelessness, poverty, it's a product of targeting in the United States because of the surveillance that is underway. Okay, the entity that is, again, and there's the exception, those that don't care about their life, those that are, that don't have any ambition. But I just want to be clear, that's an exception rather than the norm. All right. The entity is engaged in what is a pattern of targeting American citizens. And these are all the ways in which I have observed that while being in this position. And this is literally the Lord that permitted this to happen so that I could speak to it. OK, because I see things that need to change foundationally, not just with regard to exposing. You need to understand that we are under surveillance, and you need to understand that the government's engaged in warfare against American citizens. And the government's doing it with American citizens. Okay. Moreover, the system is designed to keep American citizens in that condition, in that state. All right. Within that lower, oppressed, impoverished state. And that is totally un-American as well. Okay. That's what the entity is doing while they're engaged in gang stalking. This is relevant to what the entity tried to do to me. And there are people like the Ontario police, they're going to federal prison. All right. The entity is engaged in documentation. I want to be clear. The Ontario police signing its name on things that are defamatory to my character while they're stalking me day and night in helicopters. They're going to prison. They're going to federal prison. So let me take some pictures because they're stalking right now. While the Ontario police are in relevant position, they're doing so in engineer light, while the demon-possessed people of the state are crossing path with engineer light, molesting, and they're doing so while they're listening to every word that I'm stating. First of all, you're engaged in surveillance. There's no such thing as a law enforcement when you're gang stalking. Number one. Number two, it's even more detailed and specific than that because they're engaged in surveillance of my evidence while they're crossing path. So they are visibly being present to communicate a threat. They're audibly present to communicate a threat while they're keeping my evidence under surveillance regarding criminal activity that they committed with Tracy Banks. They're going to prison. It's as simple as that. You're going to federal prison. That's not a police department. That's a raging psychopath stalking in a helicopter. That's mental illness, folks. That's mental illness. And that's what's diagnosing. That's what's criminally defaming American citizens while targeting them. And then doing so pursuant to a whole system that is designed to keep them in that state. Meanwhile, they're being targeted. A whole population of demons that are gang stalking and monitoring my vagina. This is an entity that is, again, engaging in together, not hiring you, making sure that you stay in that state, harassing you on the job, making sure that you stay in that state, because you are not going to stay on a job for long when you're being abused in the workplace. This is what LAPD did. That's a threat to my life. This is what speaker companies did. Harassing me. You're a bunch of psychopaths. You're monitoring my vagina while I'm in my apartment. You're sex offenders. And if you think that I'm not going to openly expose that, you're delusional for that as well. I'm going to make sure everybody knows that Erica Lorraine Spencer's vagina was at the center of everything that you did. You started your day thinking about my vagina. The entities engaged in this criminal conduct, and it's relevant to what it's targeting, recognizing it at every level, okay? The entity gang stalking by helicopter is the entity that engaged in that very means of targeting me. And that's why the Ontario Police is being disbanded, okay? This is P.O.C. And it's currently 10:54 p.m. This is upon my exit. Understand, upon my exit of the Ovitt Family Community Library. Do you understand what's going on inside of the Ovitt Family Community Library? When they're pacing in and out of the bathroom, this is the ongoing gang stalking that they're doing inside of the library. All right, they're doing so pursuant to what are predators. Whether I'm going in the bathroom or not, whether I'm outside of the bathroom, you're a sex offender while you're going in the bathroom engaging in surveillance. Whether I'm in there or not, you're a sex offender who is engaged in surveillance in a bathroom. There are laws that deal with that right now on the books. People that put mechanisms in order to listen to you or watch you, engaging in surveillance with the government that's stalking like you're listening to and looking at now on planes and helicopters. That's sexual violence. There are existing laws that address that very issue, that very mentally demented and predatory conduct. While I'm outside documenting, this is what they're doing inside of the Ovitt Family Community Library. All they're doing is stalking. That's it. While they're holding up a book, and those demons don't even read. They don't read. These demons don't read. They're not even smart enough to know. You're very much obvious to the federal government for no small thing under a fake sun. You know those fools walk in that library every day? They did so after I left Fontana, and they went to the Ovitt Family Community Library under the fake sun, where AMR is stalking, not in an ambulance like I was criticizing them for. They do so in an AMR SUV, license 8TWW784. AMR is a kidnapper, AMR is a sex offender, AMR employs psychopaths who are demon-possessed, who are unfit to be in the medical profession, and they're engaged in domestic terrorism. They're contracted with the City of Ontario for providing ambulatory services, but they're actually engaged in what is public corruption, sexual violence, psychological torture, and criminal activity using medical vehicles. All right, emergency vehicles that should be used for what are the provision of medical services. They're psychopaths stalking in vehicles assigned for medical services. They're psychopaths. They're sickos sitting around corners right now in the dark, listening to me, waiting to sound their sirens, because that's all they're doing. And that's pathetic, but that's the reality. And then they're also delusional because they think that, oh, we're retaliating. I don't like what you just said, so I'm going to shine you with some light. That's a demon. That's a psychopath. So I don't like what you're saying, so I'm gonna cross path and cross path is the jargon. I'm gonna speed by you and sound my sirens. Those are demons that are engaged in monitoring, and that's also, again, the petty. You're not retaliating when you're going to prison. Okay, don't cry when your wife or your baby mama or your husband is going to prison for gang stalking me, and you called it retaliation. Do not be offended. Don't be surprised when Department of Homeland Security is raiding where you're at and you don't like how they're dragging you out that building and deporting you out this country and sending you to wherever they send you. Nobody cares that you don't like how you're being deported. You're not welcome here. But you're forgetting about that right now on this side of a federal prosecution, but you're supposed to be nicely prosecuted, right? I don't understand the maniacal conduct with, again, the lack of consciousness, the delusional behavior. And all they're doing is sitting around stalking me. And so a bunch of psychopaths are, again, their pride is struck while they hear descriptions of themselves. You're the one that's monitoring my vagina, and you and I both know that that's the truth. Don't get mad at me. And by the way, you're a psychopath shining light. That's supposed to be an act of retaliation. No, that's an act of a psychopath. You're a demon. You need deliverance. And you need a therapist. License LILLEXX. Sex offenders, all of them. All right, so ARCO and CHEVRON, they represent corrupt businesses that are engaged in criminal monitoring. And the sex offenders are coming off the property of ARCO and CHEVRON, engaging in sexual violence, which, again, you don't have to chase down some license plate. You don't have to do all that. LILLEXX represents an entity. Okay, one sex offender is representing what the whole city is engaged in. And by the way, to prove that to you, I've already documented the city of Ontario for years. So there's no question about what I've already told you is indeed a template for understanding and even studying the satanic system revealing what is mental illness, rampant mental illness of a perverted population that's engaged in criminal surveillance. All right, and it's relevant to what is ongoing tactics regarding the way in which the laws are crafted, state and federal, to keep American citizens in this status, as I've exposed. It's like, the reason why I understand this is because it literally is what I'm supposed to do. It doesn't mean that I want to do it, or it does not make it fun. It doesn't make it okay, but nonetheless, I understand that because the Lord God prepared me for it. So I'm essentially a transient, but I have all of the skill set, all the tools that I need at my disposal. This is not the position of the ordinary target individual, okay? And the Lord permitted that. So it's like wearing it's like I'm wearing, like the demons wearing costumes. Those police officers, they want you to think that they're police officers. They're not. It's like that. You think that I'm weak, or you think that I'm an easy target because of your ability to target me on the job, and aha, now you're homeless, now you're helpless, now we've got you. No, it's a disguise, it's a trap. And it's also for me to speak loudly regarding, and I don't mean volume-wise, but I mean in a pronounced manner regarding what needs to change openly, okay, in a public forum regarding what needs to change, regarding my observations while being put in the position of the ordinary target individual, having the education and the background and the expertise that I have, having the qualifications and being targeted in this manner, resulting in what would be the circumstances somebody with no education, somebody with no ambition, somebody that didn't do anything. And that's what you would assume if I kept my mouth shut and didn't say anything, and you just listened to what the demon said. All right, but that couldn't be farther from the truth, and that's why I'm in this position. In the same way that the demons dress up like they're like actual cops, they're not. I am not what it appears to be on the surface, and meaning in this economic position, it is so that I can give insight regarding what the government is doing, regarding how the government is doing it, regarding what needs to change, in order that the government cannot do it again. And where the government is targeting, where the laws foundationally change, so that an American citizen with the wherewithal, an American citizen that is resourceful, an American citizen, and believe me, they're targeting those who are advanced. They're targeting those who are gifted. They're targeting those who are very capable. Even when the government is targeting you, where the laws are changing in order to make that more difficult for the government, that is to make it more obvious that the government is targeting you, it is something that won't be able to keep you captured in that economic status. And there's a lot of ways in which that can happen. Okay, and I mean, I'm not talking about the welfare state, and I don't have anything against that. But I just mean I'm not talking necessarily about getting government aid or having the government pay for this. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about those that are engaged in what is, like, I've been in that situation. I had to quit a job because I was harassed, so I moved to a different area. Not yet connecting the dots. I documented, but because I'm not a paranoid schizophrenic, I didn't assume everybody was stalking me. I was like, okay, maybe it's just bad area, I'm just going to start over. I have a whole California bar license. I can go anywhere I want in California and practice law and start over. Okay, one or two paychecks and I can get myself another place to live, and that's exactly what I did. And then I found a pattern, okay, in a different location, in a different city. All right, I started connecting those dots, and the entity is oppressing me. Okay, and I have the ability to work for myself, but the entity is trying to prohibit me from doing that. This is a means of targeting. The entity is doing this to people that have high school diplomas, trying to maintain steady work at McDonald's, and they rely on that to take care of their 4 kids. Okay, and they're also relying on partial income from the government, whatever their situation is. So I'm talking about somebody with a much different background, much different, qualifications than I have, and that is by design as well. Okay, because it was for that purpose that I was in this position, so that I could speak to what the government is doing in this country. And it is not just being unfortunate, having an unfortunate series of occurrences. The people of the state that are gang stalking are the same ones that are targeting with regard to American citizens' liberty rights. All right, they're the ones that are engaging in, and I want to be clear, it's relevant to labor law. It's relevant to the entity that's engaged in violating labor law while they're engaged in criminal surveillance. You're not a private citizen, and you're engaged in what is relevant to a greater pattern of conduct, ongoing targeting at work, and ongoing targeting with regard to a pattern of an inability to get employment. And that's no longer looked at what is just, the free right. No, you don't have to hire anybody. But when you have a pattern of conduct of showing what is targeting by the people of the state that are acting in the shoes of the government, then you've got some information there. You've got some facts and circumstances that show that this is relevant to what is a pattern of trying to exclude, a pattern to interfere unconstitutionally with American citizens' liberty right. All right, who should be employed, who should be gainfully employed. All right. Now, obviously, there are other things that you can do, but where the entity is targeting you and you can't just open up your own law firm, or who's going to be your client? The demons that are targeting you, trying to target your law licensure, trying to in every way target you, because this is the threat by the entity that's engaging in what is the P.O.C. This is how envious they are. These are the tactics that they engage in, and this is what I know at the outset. All right, so it's not necessarily about all the detail. Oh, I could have did this and I could have did that. At the end of the day, the entity is targeting me in every regard. That's why I went from practicing law to property management, something else that I had in my back pocket. Okay, and like I said, the targeted individual that's resourceful, and you're recognizing what is targeting, no matter what field I'm working in. If I were to put everything down and just go get a job at the Home Depot, guess where they would have been targeting me? At Home Depot. Because the entity is, again, a bunch of demons that have decided to target an American citizen in order that they do not succeed in whatever it is that they try to do. While the entity seeks to maintain a false narrative regarding your character, regarding your ability, or regarding why what happened to you. And it's the product of surveillance. Okay, and that's the last thing I want to say. The Ontario Police Department is pacing by helicopter. The people of the state are always monitoring. All right, they're doing so as an entity. So it is currently, again, 11:05 p.m. And those are two businesses. Again, Chevron and ARCO are not the only businesses over here, but those are where the demons are coming from. They're gang stalking at those gas stations, and they're systematically. These demons are very much both. You're obsessed with my vagina, but then you're also engaged in acts of violence because you're mad at me. Again, that's very psychopathic behavior, and it's a threat to your safety. That's a threat to your life, and this is the entity that's conspiring your murder. That's why you have that maniacal conduct. You're stalking me in the bathroom. That's you, not me. I'm not making it up. I can't make those facts up. Okay? The entity's engaging what? You're obsessed with me. You're stalking me in the bathroom. That's what you're following me everywhere that I go. And then at the same time, you're obviously very angry because psychopaths think that I'm going to shine you with light. Those are the demons that need medical assistance. They need severe mental examinations, like routine, a battery of tests. I'm not exaggerating. These are the ones that are engaged in pedophilia. These are the ones that engage in voyeurism. These are the ones that are engaged in all manner of sexual deviancy, criminal conduct, violence against the public, violence against a large mass amount of people, the shootings at the schools, okay, shootings at malls. This is the same entity. This is a spirit, and it's demonic. And this is relevant to what is surveillance. Then you have the psychopaths acting like they don't know what happened. They're going to investigate. We have to look and see. These are the demon-possessed that are engaged in this conduct. Guess what? The school shootings are happening under the fake sun. The report of that shooting is happening under the fake sun. The entity that's monitoring me and knows what's going on between my legs, they know what happened. Those are psychopaths that are shining light as a means of retaliation. You need help. You need serious help. And the P.O.C. proves that you need help. But you need help while you're roaming the streets all night long to stalk me. I'm sleeping outside. That's how obsessive they are with monitoring and targeting American citizens. That's relevant for you to know. Okay? Whether I'm living in a mansion or whether I'm sleeping on a bench outside, that is evident to you regarding the demon-possessed that are maniacal and obsessive with regard to targeting and ruining the lives of an American citizen that they have decided that they will target and ruin. Okay? That's what's relevant regarding that information. So I just want to make sure that is clear. Okay? It's 11:07 p.m. Okay, now I'm actually going to stop now. I know I said that before. It's 11:08 p.m. This is P.O.C. All right, 11:25 p.m. Ontario Police north of me, flying in circles, and Ontario International Airport south of me, stalking both of the functions of the City of Ontario. Engaging gang stalking, monitoring while the video captured at 9:45 p.m. of the Ontario International Airport gang stalking at the same Starbucks at 507 North Euclid Avenue, where the Ontario Police is again crossing path. I'm capturing during the podcast them maintaining presence, doing so while I'm referring to this entity that's monitored. This isn't a coincidence, by the way, that as I'm documenting that and the entities engage in a pattern, and the Ontario Police have already shown, nobody is questioning. The Ontario Police are stalking by helicopter, and this is the entity that is clearly expecting to go to federal prison. So the entities, that's the evidence against every kidnapper, because that's exactly what they are, and they're going to prison. That's where enemies of the United States belong, that want to dress up and play Halloween, wearing police uniforms and bearing weapons, while they're engaged in murder, and they're engaged in serial killings. They're engaged in targeting American citizens, and they are psychopaths who are stalking American citizens like we are in Baghdad, but we are in Southern California. They are indeed psychopaths, and you know that because they do so as psychopaths pacing around me ceaselessly, and during the day it's under a fake sun. The Ontario International Airport and the Ontario Police together target while I'm documenting it, and you'll see that uploaded to the Google Drive at 11:24 p.m. 11:24 p.m. And the entities engaging in this flying in circles, this pacing conduct, this mentally ill behavior, while the entity is again monitoring evidence. And I'm documenting again earlier at what is 10:13 p.m. the Ontario police stalking by helicopter, doing so while I am documenting that pattern of conduct, documenting again at 10:52 p.m. stalking by helicopter, doing so while the entity is listening to everything that I am stating, and stalking by helicopter is designed to silence, but I'm documenting that. That's exactly why you're going to surround policy and target terrorists like the Ontario Police Department. This is Mike LORENZ's open declaration of hatred for this country, and this is somebody that is entirely unfit to be in the position that he is in, while the Ontario Police engage in the openly un-American conduct of stalking any American citizen, let alone the person that's prosecuting and maintaining a detailed body of evidence. Okay, literally a laundry list. The kidnappers in 2019, the kidnappers in 2020, the kidnappers in 2021, the kidnappers in 2022, the kidnappers in 2025, they're going to prison. And that's just the Ontario Police. Those that are engaged in criminal summoning with that department are going to federal prison. Those that engage in kidnapping, like those at the Arrowhead Regional Medical Center, guess where they're going? Federal prison. Okay, this is the entity that's providing evidence against how that entirety of that entity is targeting with the Ontario Police as well, while they're conspicuously stalking, and more so as their document. These are the co-defendants that provide evidence against each other while they are all engaging in the same pattern of conduct. It is a seamless prosecution that's already completed on the internet. But you'll see those images of, again, the entity that's going to federal prison. While you see the Ontario Police stalking, you all should have all their names memorized regarding all the kidnappers that are going to federal prison. And you should, because terrorists in this country are hated by this country. They're not welcome, and they are going to federal prison. And that list is published on YouTube on my channel, the P.O.C. That list is published on X. It's called This is the P.O.C. And you will see the list of kidnappers as of 2025. They're all going to federal prison, every single last one of them. It is currently 11:29 p.m. The entity is engaging in what is documented acts of terrorism, stalking me from behind with the planes and stalking in front with the helicopter. The entire city of Ontario is going to be prosecuted, and the immigrants are being deported based on the criminal conduct of the city of Ontario that engages in terrorism in reliance on immigrants. And that's why they're not welcome in this country either. No terrorist is, homegrown or foreign. This is P.O.C.